the Little Richard Memorial Show. I wasn't joking. So
Tim just found out Little Richard died, and he's all upset. And I didn't know he was still alive, so I'm not all upset.
yeah. It's like I'm on stage and on live TV, and somebody whispered in my ear, then went, "Go!"
You're that big a Little Richard fan?
Yeah, I've been that guy since I was a kid. My grandmother played his actual albums for me when I was a little kid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I grew up with Little Richard. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, when I was a little kid, it was like JJ, Little Richard, Evel Knievel. I knew Tutti Frutti, and I actually knew Long Tall Sally at one point. Well, knew of her. Not. So, what you been into this week? We talked a little bit before.
Well, I've been reading a few things that I showed on my. I've been reading some Fletcher Hanks.
Nice.
Do you know him?
Not really. It's one of those things where somebody in a video has talked about him over the years.
Right. There's no reason really. He was this guy. Here's one of the books. There's 2 books about him that came out fairly recently. Otherwise, I never heard of him. What year did this come out? And he did all his work in like 39 and 40. So he's that old. I mean, his stuff is that old. And it's just crazy stuff. It's 2006 did this come out in? It's been sitting on my shelf for years now, and I finally decided. Because you know how it is with Golden Age stuff. You're kind of like, yeah. So I can't. A lot of Golden Age stuff is hard to read.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Golden Age stuff, to me, it's interesting to look at.
It's very historical, but this stuff is actually really easy to read. What year did it come out? 2009. And there's a sequel to it that came out a year or 2 later. And it's just this crazy stuff where they're all like 6-page stories. He's got these crazy characters. Fatoma, and they all have like these magic powers so they can just do anything. And crimes happen, and then they just like punish the criminals.
Yeah, say his name again. Yeah, what was his name again?
Fletcher Hanks. You shall die by your own evil creation.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's not even, and it's actually pretty good stuff. It's not even one of those so bad it's good things. He's actually a pretty good cartoonist. And he only worked in 39 and 40, as they say, before all the rules were set. So it's everything is boom, boom, boom. This happens. And then his explanations are just like one paragraph, like crazy things happen. It's all like science fiction and jungle. My favorite guy in this, though, is, what is the Big Red McLean.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he's just, he just works in the North Woods in 1940, whenever this took place, and he's just this guy who brawls. And it's like he's a woodsman, so he's working with a boss. He's always they're chopping down trees, bringing the logs down the river but that's his job. But most of the time, there's always like gangs trying to muscle in on the timber action. So he kicks the crap out of them. Yeah. And it's just like that. That's basically what he does. Except for one time, he was saved by his partner. Every other time, he saved his partner and kicked the crap. And it's just like 6-page fist fights. With
the pre-code days. Well, let me throw out here, because I did my list. Earl Grey 2 years ago did a panology with a guy in it, and that led me down to a little bit of a few little videos on it I watched here and there. So. That's what I mean. It rung a bell, but no, I've never read it. I've just watched a few videos here. But apparently, the big character he had was Phantoma.
Phantoma, Stardust, and some people compare him to Basil Wolverton in the sort of crazy visual stuff.
Basil Wolverton's my guy. His stuff just feels odd because you can't believe it came out when it came out. It's so timeless. They were unique. But those pre-code days, the things that gets me is that those are the comics that will shock me every now and then. You're talking about the lumberjack just like hurting people. I read a Marvel Boy story from like 1953 where a lady transforms into a snake, and he walks over there and he breaks the snake's back, and he's like, "That's what you get." And he's watching her. She turns back into a human, and she's it's like in a house, and she goes on the sidewalk and she's like dragging herself by her arms, and he's like, "That's what you get," you know. Just breaks her back and lets her crawl away on the sidewalk, and I'm like, "Oh my god!" I mean, there's some brutal stuff in those.
I never read any pre-code stuff until maybe 10 years ago when they started reprinting a lot of that. And I think it was some Steve Ditko pre-code stuff I read. And that's when I realized how censored comics were. Mm-hmm. Not just in that there was a censorship, but your mind gets censored. Because I was reading the pre-code stuff and it was so different. Not only there really wasn't, graphic violence and stuff like that when I was reading, but there was just anything could happen. Yeah. Like I remember reading this one story about, I may have been in the Ditko book, pre-code stuff, where there was just this father who was getting old. He was a rich old man, and he wanted to, he invited all his spoiled brat grown up kids there. And they all just wanted his money, and they were mean and horrible to him, and he ended up tricking them and killing them at the end. And it was just like, all right.
Yeah, I think I had that in some reprints and stuff.
A lot of them just like ended in death. It wasn't even like they were particularly violent, but it was like the writers' minds were free to go in any direction they wanted. Meanwhile, like in the age of censorship, which has been up until I would even say fairly recently, you couldn't go wherever your mind wanted to. You can only go within these parameters, and that affects your creative mind as your mind is pre-censored. Yeah, and I really realized how pre-censored comic book writers' minds were once I read the pre-code stuff.
This is one of the things, even as a kid, I don't know where it came from, that I always had that. I'm like, let these guys go. I read these books where I can see where they can go. You know what I mean? So when I read some of that, I think one of the first pre-code books I ever read was a reprint that made it into a horror book in the 70s. But it was like this guy who was he was a pickpocket, but he had a prehensile tail like a mouse. Right. So he could sit there and pick pockets with his tail. He ends up at some burlesque show or something. Like this is in the 50s now. He ends up like at a burlesque show or something. And he looks up and the girl's got a cat tail. It's all fuzzy. So he sneaks backstage. He's being all slimy on her. The behavior was just sort of like, whoa, like this guy was greasy. The guy glided when he walked. You know what I'm saying? And and he sits there and the girl started playing with his tail, looking at it. And I'm sitting here like this. And finally she turns around and she kills him. And she was like, you stupid bastard. I'm a cat. You're a mouse. Of course I'm going to kill you. It's like zig and zag and left and right. You didn't know where this story was going. The characters were like, seriously, like a hooker and this greasy heroin junkie. If you read between the lines, you know what I mean? He snuck it in. There was just so much there, and that was the pre-code stuff. But like I said, sometimes you'd have the brutal violence is what would get me sometimes, and how the heroes acted. Like your back is broke. I'm gonna let you crawl away, and you deserved it. I mean, it's just amazing.
But even like in our era of post comics code, even the uncensored stuff was reacting to the censorship. Mm-hmm. In that most of the uncensored stuff that I've read had a lot to do with sex and violence, which was the most censored stuff. They weren't using uncensored minds because they were reacting to the censored. They wanted to do this. So it's like you have the censorship, and then the stuff outside the censorship, the stuff that gets done most is the stuff that the censor would cut. So it's not even like their minds were free to go in any. Like I said, when I read these, they would go just in any direction. It would just be you'd have no clue what direction they were going.
That's one of the few things that's been frustrating for me with the comics in the last 20 years. Like, to me, I feel like we've matured as an audience or something. A lot of that stuff that they censored comics with and the Code Authority, we've seen it thrown away, and bringing in Alan Moore. I mean, there's a whole, I could go on and on about all this stuff. But one thing that kills me is there's no reason for, in my mind, there should be no reason for crappy comics, because now we really can go anywhere. And I read those, I think about those pre-code books like you're talking about and stuff. And I'm like, just imagine what they could do now. To me, there's no reason. We got all kinds of people. Wow.
I think Saga, I decided as I was reading it, Saga is one of the first post-censorship comics.
Yeah. It's a step in the right direction.
Right. Because it was using, nudity or sex or violence just sort of in the mix as a matter of course, rather than exploitively or because they're not allowed to use it.
Well, it's not in my opinion, it's not exploitive, but I mean, right. Saga is a book that I don't like, but I'm glad it's there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's too topical. Like, one of the bravest things it did that people don't really realize, and I've got this feedback from actual women with babies, is right on the first cover, there's breastfeeding. People don't realize that's actually one of the things that could be censored. So that's why I'm saying it's a step in the right direction. It's little subtle things. It's not showing off that I can do whatever I want, but it takes a few steps to where I'm like, good for you.
Yeah, I read a little article about that too, that cover, when they were talking about it, because Image Comics doesn't censor their stuff, but they were like, but they said to, what's his name? The two people who do it, Fiona Staples and Brian K. Vaughan, they were like, are you sure you want to do this? It might give you trouble in the book trade. And they're like,
Now, I know a girl who actually knew somebody online, and he made her a poster of that front cover. She's got it in her bedroom.
Oh, okay.
Because that book came out like when one of her kids was born, and she was like trying to tell me, you don't understand how it is to see a girl breastfeeding, shooting people. And I'm sitting here like, you're absolutely right. I don't. But
Paulo Costa just said, if you say Saga 3 times, Gore Vidal will appear.
That's cool, man. All right. I like the topic we're on, man. Now I wish I could change the title of the book, but you want to get on this?
Go ahead. Let me show you the other thing I was reading.
All right. Let's see who we got out here, man. Morning, guys. Oh, man. We got the usual suspects out here, man. Scott Connor, John Jones, Rob Ripa, Victor Thomas, Toki Deathhammer, John, Paulo Costa. Steve is out there. What's up, brother? All right. I like how they're starting to talk to each other and know each other. Yeah, creators are more fearful of Twitter than they are the Comics Code. I don't understand that, but he's right.
You've never seen anything, dude. There was an editor in the 90s, Don Daly. He edited The Punisher at Marvel. And you should seen him wheel and deal with the Comics Code. Yeah. Because the Comics Code was still in effect. So he'd be putting things in how about if we see if we can get this by him and this by, if we give them this and this, will they let this go by? And this? So he was always trying to get more adult violence in the Punisher. And he was putting things in and, because he would always be wheeling and dealing with the Comics Code people to get what he wanted in there. I always found that amusing. That he was just a wheeler and dealer. That's what he was doing with the Comics Code. This is also what I've been reading. I don't know if you've ever seen Rex Mundi.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I know of it. I
always enjoyed it. It came out from, I think, 2002 into 2007. There were 2 volumes of it. Somewhere around 20 issues with Image, and maybe it's the same with Dark Horse.
Yeah.
And it came out just before the Da Vinci Code. So it got compared to the Da Vinci Code a lot because they were using the same source material. I don't know if you know who Henry Lincoln is.
Nah.
He made these documentaries, which I've loved since I was a kid. He made 3 of them in the 70s. The last one may have been the early 80s. And what was the they're all about the Knights Templar. And the third one,
Illuminati.
I taped off the History Channel in 1990. And I used to run it all the time, and I still put it on every now and then. It's I know every word of it. and what's funny is it's all about the Knights Templar and this big centuries-long plot that's been going on and how it's still going on. If you've ever seen the Da Vinci Code, they pull everything. They pull
from Rex
everything from Henry Lincoln's work. And then, and it's just all, and I love history and I love stuff. And so, like, there's all Rennes Le Chateau.
Wait a minute. Did you just refer to Illuminati stuff as history?
No, it's not actual. This isn't actually the Illuminati. This has nothing to do with the Illuminati.
I got you.
But but then there's another show I saw later on that points out that it's all bullshit. But it's not. But it's all about, you know, Mary Magdalene being the flood of Christ, and this is the. I love it's Henry Lincoln is just a great storyteller.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
And this kind of takes all that, and it takes place in an alternate history in the 1930s, and the Protestant Reformation never happened.
Ah, okay.
So that all the houses of Europe, they give you maps and everything. All the houses of Europe are still there. All the royal houses. The church is still really powerful. There's like the French Empire. The Moors are still in Spain.
Nice.
Russia has an empire. The Holy Roman Empire is still intact, and it's the story of a doctor. There's all these guilds too, so he's part of the medical guilds, the doctors. And his name is Saunier, who's named after one of the Henry Lincoln characters, who's an actual guy. And he stumbles onto a murder, and he kind of Gore Vidal's here. So he said saga. So he stumbles onto this conspiracy that's going on, which is very much like the conspiracy in the Henry Lincoln books.
Gotcha.
Except he's got like the church is after him. There's secular police who are kind of not the most powerful. And then there's the church police who are the inquisitors. And they wear these robes and masks when they go around, and they have like almost total authority. And then there's like world politics going on in it too, because one of the characters is the Duke of Lorraine, who's like, they go into French politics, and he wants to take over the Middle East, the Duke of and go against the French king. And so there's like this micro thing going on, which is the doctor investigating this 1,000-year-old conspiracy, and then there's the macro thing going on, which is the Duke of Lorraine trying to bring France to war so they can take over the Middle East. And the two things are like crashing together because all the power brokers are involved in this. And it's just such fun. If you like history and you like alternate,
I just can't believe he's got that much depth and substance in a comic. The way you're talking, I mean,
this is one of my favorite things too. In the back, there's 2 pages.
Here we go. Okay.
That are
supplemental material. I got
newspaper pages of the time and place. So it gives you even more background material and the little newspaper article. It's like and the issue I just read, the Duke of Lorraine. Like I said, there's the king and there's the 2 houses of parliament. And the one house of parliament is on the king's side. The other house of parliament is trying to do its own thing. The Duke of Lorraine is in charge of the that came out the same. And the urban legend is Henry Lincoln's work. It's not actually an urban legend. Henry Lincoln came up with all of that stuff. And like, what's his name? All of a sudden I forgot his name. The guy who Churchill just showed up in this issue too, from England, making a deal with the Duke of Lorraine to try and this geopolitical stuff. Rex Mundi is just I just find it a lot of fun. I showed it off in my latest non-haul video. So
awesome! All right, guys, and somebody get Gore Vidal was caught up there.
Rex Mundi is what I'm discussing. Like I said, there's 2 volumes. Rex Mundi. First volume came from Image, I think it was 18 issues. I'm not even sure. The second volume was about the same length that came from Dark Horse, and the writer is
So I mean,
Arvid Nelson. What was that?
oh, go ahead.
The writer is Arvid Nelson, and the first artist is this guy named Eric J, who I'd never seen before.
Okay.
And then it was taken over by, I think it was Juan Ferreira. I forget how, who's still around.
Yeah,
he did a book called Colder for Dark Horse, amongst other things.
Nice. So is that thing complete and done? If you track those down,
yeah, it's complete and done. It's complete and done. Ran from, like I said, 02 to 07. I think you can buy it all in trade. And it's just, you probably get it digitally. Like I said, it's an excellent story. Oh, and there's also magic in this universe, but it's not Doctor Strange magic. It's kind of low level. You can do certain magical things, magic.
H.P. Lovecraftian.
It's frowned upon, but it's legal. But if you do it in part of a criminal enterprise, that's witchcraft, and the Inquisitors come after you hard.
Now it's witchcraft.
yeah, then it's witchcraft.
I like how they manipulate the laws just so they can get one more charge on you when they catch you. We're going to make sure we put you in jail.
Yeah. So as I said, I'm having a lot like this. I think this is the first time I think I'd made a video on it like 3 or 4 years ago, but this is the first time I've reread it since it ended in 07. So I'm just having a lot of fun rereading it because I really enjoy. Listen, I'm a big Henry Lincoln fan. I'm gonna have to put a playlist together of his videos because they're on YouTube. They're his old documentaries, and I said, he's just such a great storyteller. Like I said, all of the Da Vinci Code is based on his work, his research, which turned out to be a big scam. That not on him, he wasn't the one scamming. But then what's interesting about Henry Lincoln too is all that Rennes le Chateau turned out to be BS. But he found this whole other area, which is kind of like sacred geometry, but on a grand scale. How people, like in the Middle Ages, were building these buildings in the landscape according to some sort of sacred geometry. And he's like, I don't know what this means. He's like, he's showing you what he found, how all these buildings line up, and all this old knowledge that they used to have and why they built the buildings this way. And he's like, you know what? This could all be coincidence, but I don't think so. But I also don't know what the hell it means. So it's like interesting stuff.
This means something. I know it
means something. I don't know what though. But he's a great storyteller. If you ever see his video, I'll just send you a link to the video so we can put them in here. Just so
I don't know. I pictured this scene out of Close Encounters for just a minute. Yeah, I'm going to watch the Henry Lincoln stuff tonight. I'm going to be here by myself tonight, and all I've been doing is really cataloging comics. On the CLZ app, cataloging my comics. And I'm doing that thing where as I go through, I'm trying not to make a list of stuff to reread. I'm like, that looks good. The Barry Winslow Smith's 90s stuff, the Rune and Conan meets Rune, people going back and stuff. I'm sitting here, that's the kind of stuff getting put to the side. But the stuff you're talking about, that's like right up my alley. It really is.
If you can watch the Henry Lincoln documentaries before, watch the Henry Lincoln documentary. I'll send you a link, and then watch the one that tells you how it's all bullshit. That one's pretty cool too, because they have other investigators going through it. I'm
going to kick myself if I start watching it, and I'm going to be like, "Wait, I've seen this." Because I love all those shows. One Leonard Nimoy and who's that dude that had the white hair? He looked like Leslie Nielsen, but he wasn't Leslie Nielsen. He had a show too. They actually put him on Men in Black in the movie with one of his fake episodes.
Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World was one of the best ones because he called BS on everything that was BS.
Yeah. And then there's a dude I followed in the 80s because he showed up on like That's Incredible and stuff. And I love this guy because all he did was debunk all the psychics and stuff. And he's got a huge following. I can't believe I'm losing his name, but I watched that stuff. Yet when the 90s came in, I'm like, bring back X-Files, damn it.
I actually fall asleep at night to the Henry Lincoln documentaries just because I put it on low, I put on sleep, and I just fall because I've seen it and heard it 1,000 times. So it's like I pay no attention to it, but it's just on in the background for cool. I fall asleep fairly quickly. So for like 5-10 minutes, I have Henry Lincoln lulling me to sleep as he tells his story.
Oh man, you got Paulo just going now, man. He's like bringing in history. Like, how could Charlemagne still do this? Yeah, I love it when
Oh,
people.
that's the great stuff about this. You can talk alternate history. You can talk about this stuff all day. The Spanish marches are still there because it's fun stuff, isn't it?
you might have found like a new genre to start doing videos on the alternate
history.
Oh man. Well, talking about conspiracies in history, alternate histories, and all that stuff, that kind of fits in with those crazy 90s, where, the news turned into the tabloids,
Right.
We can keep talking about this stuff, man. Or do you want to go to 1997 and do the comics or whatever you want to do, man?
I think we've covered these two, I think, enough. I mean, I could go on about alternate history and Rex Mundi all day, so I don't know.
Oh, I'm ready to
wait till you see the documentary. We'll talk more about it once you've seen like I said, once you see Henry Lincoln's what is that? I can't even remember the name of it. I'll get the name later. Once you see that, you'll know. Have you read the Da Vinci Code and seen the movies or anything like that?
I've seen the movies, and I think I'm halfway through the hardback, but right before I moved, so it's in a box. Right. I finally gave in and read it because I got it for free at a library. Like they were giving away the books, and they just gave it to me. Hardback.
Then you'll see where it all comes from. You'll be like, this makes sense. This is cool. So you want to go to 1997?
Yeah, if you want, man. Let me go ahead and share.
We're going to Mike's Amazing World of Comics. We're going with May 1997. We're going to see what comics came out that we read.
All right. Did it get up there? There we go.
Look at that 2020 Visions #3. Wasn't that DC's like previews magazine there?
Let me take a look here because I kind of remember.
It was, if I remember correctly.
Nope. Well, it's got Jamie Delano, Frank Quietly in this.
Oh. Was it? Well, I can't remember if it was Axel Alonso's the 23, only 23 pages. Vertigo. Oh, it might be one of those samplers.
Yeah, and this is Axel Alonso when he was like groundbreaking. When he took over. But just before we get on here, because we got the same people that watch this stuff. I think it was last week that Jared wanted to go back to like 1997 on this. And like I did a knee-jerk reaction. Well, I'm gonna do full disclosure. You're gonna get a little drama here, but when he said 1997, the reason I was like, no, is because this is the year I got married the first time in life. When I hear 1997, I'm like, I'm gonna kick you in the nuts. What? No.
That was a weird reaction. I was just like, okay, I'm not going to push it. Well, just like 1997.
Yeah, that's why I'm putting it out there, man. That's awesome, man. The 2020 Visions, I never picked these up. I never really heard anybody talk about them. That's what's a lot about it. But the Superman books, we're doing the whole electric thing here with the electric Superman.
I don't remember that cover.
Well, there's a reason.
Yeah.
But and
what did I read this year? We had Adventures in the DC Universe. I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, I remember these. These were little magazines. Well, this was an actual comic, but they also came out with an oversized comic with had like a piece of blue cardboard around it, and these were really like for kids and stuff. Really trying to bring them out. I've got one issue of this, but like I said, it's a bit oversized, and I don't know if it was a reprint or anything. But this was influenced by the Bruce Timm, Paul Dini comics, if I remember right. Cartoons. Yeah, it's 1997. This might have been around the year that they brought back Batman, the animated series, for that 4th episode or something. They were still mining them back then.
Oh, I just flipped to the next one. I had never heard of Adventures of Aaron #2 by Image, licked by a chopper chick.
Yeah, I never heard of this.
This was a weird period for Image because I think all their original guys were gone, except for, of course, Eric Larson doing Savage Dragon and maybe some Spawn too. But they were probably looking for an identity, and I don't know what this identity was, but it's kind of wacky.
Well, I might be corrected as we go through here and stuff, but there's like about a 2 year period there that Image just wasn't really. I mean, it's kind of like they had settled out. You had the Heroes Reborn with Lee and Liefeld kind of winding up around this
Oh,
time, if
that's
I
right.
remember right. Yeah,
That
so
was
that's where
96, 97, right?
somewhere around there. It was around the time all that was winding down, and that's what everybody was talking about. You took two Image guys and threw them over here on the Marvel books, and it was like nobody was talking about Image for like about 2-3
Yeah.
years. And you want to talk, about a weird week since we're talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
There's been 2 nothing books go up in value that are like that blew up on eBay, and they might still be blowing up. And one was a homage book. I don't know if that was under Image or Wildstorm back then, but called Ball and Chain because they announced a movie with The Rock in it. And but nobody remembers, nobody knows. And Youngblood #2 because they announced a Prophet movie or TV show.
Okay.
So I'm sitting here like cracking up, going 2 nothing books have like,
all of a sudden everybody wants them.
Yeah. And that's around this period of Image and stuff when the indie books. I think this was like, yeah.
Let's hope that the Adventures of Aaron becomes a movie, so everybody chases after it.
Yeah, I mean, Licked by the Copper Chick. You talk about breaking out of that censorship. I mean, do you want her to lick you, or is that the punishment for making a crime? I mean, is there something we don't know?
Is there superpower that she's got an acid tongue?
Oh man. Bunch of
there's the Electric Superman Adventures of.
Yeah, this time, this era around Superman killed me because they were doing was Superman Red and Superman Blue, and changed his powers completely. They were electrical based, but you had Grant Morrison bringing back the JLA, and like making it the Justice League book, and we got Superman running around that blue costume instead of his, red and instead of the trunks, and it just killed me. I'm like, y'all ruined a moment. This is like those 2 girls that were with Madonna at the Super Bowl, and it was one girl flipped off the camera and ruined the moment, and I'm like,
There is another Image book I've never heard of, The Age of Heroes.
Yep, didn't even see this one on the stand. Who is that? James D. Hundell. That's unusual. He's actually a really good writer.
Yeah, Paul Costa says 1997 was an intermission year for me. Marvel's bankruptcy ruined the Portuguese newsstand comic market. So with Heroes Return Avengers #1, I started buying the original US comics. Interesting.
Did you ever get into the Alien books?
I never did. The only one I remember reading and liking was Lee Weeks drew it, Superman Alien.
Yeah, Kevin Nolan inked that, I think, which I have that. That's the story was weak, but the art made up for it, in my opinion.
I thought the story was okay. I can't remember who wrote it, but it was
Dan Jurgens. Dan Jurgens.
No, I don't think it was it Dan Jurgens? Superman Aliens? I thought it was Kurt Busiek or someone like that, but I can't remember. It was like Superman on an asteroid weakened fighting an alien.
They went back to some Silver Age influences. I think the sun was a different color or was about to die, so he wasn't really getting charged up the way he needed to be. And that's what they used to do in the Legion of Superheroes books when they'd play around with the colors and of the suns in different parts of the universe to explain why Superboy was depowered. So that's why I was sitting there like it was like a good wink and a nod in there.
Right. Paul Costa just said Image put out a lot of new comics around this time. That's when Jim Valentino became the publisher, if I recall correctly. Unfortunately, a lot of their new titles slipped through the cracks. Yeah, I don't think his publishing era was very well received, if I remember correctly. I don't think I obviously didn't receive it well since I don't remember. Oh,
yeah.
That All-Star Comics Archives Volume 3, I see one of the, it always reminds me of at that time at Marvel. Marvel and DC used to trade comics with each other, so that everybody at Marvel would get would get all the DC comics, and everybody at DC would get all the Marvel comics. And that included the hardcovers, and there weren't many of them in those days. So when like All-Star Comics Archives #1 Jim Hanley's Universe is a comic shop in Manhattan. That they used to have a deal with the employees at Marvel where you get your stack of comics. And in those days, Marvel and DC were putting out 100 comics a month each or something like that. A lot.
Right.
If you wanted to turn in your comics for credit at Jim Hanley's Universe, you could. So it's like Jim Hanley's Universe will give you like a quarter of their cover value credit or something like whatever the deal was. So people would just like, the people who didn't care about comics would just march into Jim Hanley's or cared about comics but not Marvel and DC would march down to Jim Hanley's Universe, hand in their comics, and get credit for it. So many people handed in All-Star Comics Archives Volume 1 that Jim Hanley had to say, no more, we don't want that one. And for years, it might even be till this day, they have a whole bunch of those All-Star Comics #1 because they got like 200 copies just from Marvel and DC employees. Not wanting.
Oh my God. That's hilarious. This #3 is interesting because it's got Shanghai into space, and that's a pretty famous JSA story that Roy Thomas ended up rewriting as some stories in All-Star Squadron there towards the end, pulling from it. So I don't know what came first. It was famous on its own, or if it did that. But the All-Star, it breaks my heart that somebody's going to take some Justice Society stories and be like, "Here, let's trade me in, man." Oh my gosh! I'm beginning to realize. I'm beginning to think that this is when they were doing those -1 issues at Marvel.
The flashback ones. I remember those.
I thought it was stupid, but here's what makes me happy: seeing that American Splendor was still trugging along.
Oh, look at that, American
Harvey
Splendor.
Picard. Yeah, I love that movie. Have you watched the American Splendor movie?
Yes, I do enjoy it a lot too. That's a good one. That made me like the comics better. That made me go back and revisit them and get more interested.
My favorite Harvey Picard strip was the one where he talks about the telephone book and wonder about the other Harvey Picard people. Because when I was a kid, I did that with our phone book. As soon as we didn't get our first phone till like 1980. So I was excited. I was like 7 years old, excited. I want to see our name in the phone book.
The new phone book is here. The new phone book is here. That was you.
Well, what was so funny is there was two Pam and Bill. Pam and Bill were my parents' name, right? There was two of them, us. And then I looked at the address for the second set, and they were next door to us. We were next door to another Bill and Pam Mullins, which blew my mind. So when they did that in the movie and they made like it perfect, that Harvey Picard did this whole thing about his name being unique and wondering about the lives of other people named Harvey Picard that he met. And it's brilliant. What was that actor's name? Paul Giamatti? No.
Yeah, Paul Giamatti.
Yeah, he was brilliant in that, man. And the Revenge of the Nerds talk and all that stuff that was in it cracked me up.
That was good. I actually really liked because I started buying his stuff, his new stuff after the movie. My old classmate Dean Haspiel did The Loser with Harvey Picard, which was like an autobiography. Oh, it was
your old classmate worked with Harvey.
Yeah, he I went to SUNY Purchase College with Dean Haspiel. So I've known him, but I haven't seen him in a lot of years. But he did Harvey P. He was like the king of the mini comics in the 90s too. He's a good guy. He also Dean Haspiel he started even before SUNY Purchase where I was. He was Howard Chaykin's assistant.
Nice.
So he comes from, and he also it's funny because it's funny how small the world is. Dean Haspiel also grew up with what's his name? All of a sudden his name flew out of my head. I can't remember, but I never met him, but he's Denny O'Neill's son. Larry O'Neill, who I've never met, but I only know him through Dean. And so Dean Haspiel, who I went to Purchase was with, and Larry O'Neill, Denny O'Neill's son, grew up together. And who was their babysitter when they were little? Flo Steinberg from Marvel. So I was like, talk about a small world.
This is awesome, man. It's like there's a continuity behind the scenes all its own, full of coincidences.
It's like crazy. But yeah, Dean, I think it's called The Loser. Where is it? Is it on my shelf up there? No, The Quitter. There it is.
The Quitter. I got a whole collection of American Splendor here somewhere. All right. What we got?
Harvey Pekar and Dean Haspiel. And it's all about Harvey Pekar's life and how he quit everything. He's really not that smart. When the year did this come out? It's real good.
I'm beginning to see that this was like the years of Image having just like a lot of ghost books, apparently.
Yeah, there's just not a ton of Image stuff. I still haven't got into anything. Actually, Animaniacs, Aquaman, Arcanum.
Yeah, that was, I don't know, but it was advertised like crazy in every book that I picked up. It felt like there for a while. I bet it was like a Liam Sharp or somebody.
Brandon Peterson.
Yeah.
He was semi-hot for a while, Brandon Peterson.
So we get through the
variants of Arcanum.
Uh-huh. Where was that? You broke up for a minute here on me.
I said there's even a variant cover of Arcanum.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing that stuff advertisement. The Image books back then would have like felt like 15 pages of advertisements for other people's books.
Barry Windsor Smith Storyteller was coming out. I bought that. Did you buy that?
I have an issue of it. Let me find it here.
It's under B.
Yeah, Badger Backlash.
Batman Avengers.
Huh?
I was like, Badger was still coming out, or is that a mini? Oh yeah, Badger 78.
Yeah. Now the Barry Windsor Smith the Barry Windsor Smith Storytellers. By this time, I was just a full-fledged Barry Windsor Smith nut. If there's somebody who I think should have owned the 90s, it should have been him. The stuff at Valiant and all this stuff. But these were treasury-sized, real thin editions where he told 4 stories. I have 1 or 2 issues around here, and every time I find these, they're $10 a piece, and there weren't many of them. Awesome. To me, these are the gems left, little buried treasure of the 90s still out there, man. They're so good. He has double page spreads of like dragons and stuff in them. Now, what were you talking about?
It did not sell well. Oh, the Badger, which was right before it.
Yeah.
I bought the Badger all through the 80s. I don't remember it in Image in the 90s.
Well, I remember, I don't know if it was the 90s. It had to have been the 90s. I'm going off here, but Image was getting a lot of properties that people who had been indie publishing for a while, then they'd get out for some reason. And Bone was one of the big stories. A lot of people got confused with Bone because of the, Image symbol being on them. Like then they would reprint older issues and stuff. So the fact that you didn't know Badger was that Image, I don't think it'd make a difference because they didn't change the numbering, Yeah.
Oh, and Paul Costa asked, Jared, didn't the Comics Exchange end when Rich Johnston did an expose on it? I think I remember him mentioning it back in the mailing list days. He did mention it, but that's not why it ended. It ended because sometime in the it ended because DC put an end to it. DC Comics. Sometime in the early 2000s, was it? I can't remember when. It was when there was some shenanigans going on with distribution in the somewhere in the Southwest area in Arizona, I think it was. And the story I heard went, that's because one of the DC secretaries who'd been there for a long, long time kind of piggybacked on DC's distribution network. Somehow she was doing some sort of shenanigans where she and whoever her partner was started distributing books in the Southwest, like basically stealing them from DC. and distributing books in the Southwest to comic shops. So all of a sudden, a whole bunch of comic shops in the Southwest weren't buying books from Diamond. So they were like, well, where are they getting their comics from? And so Warner DC launched an internal investigation to try and figure out what was going on. And along the way, they discovered that Jim Hanley's universe, like, was getting books from DC employees and training them for, like, Jim Hanley's universe even wasn't buying as many books as it was selling from Diamond distributors. So DC, because there was like people who had scams, like there was like maybe a dozen people at DC, maybe less, maybe 6, who would go around and collect the books from all the people who weren't comic fans. They didn't care. So they'd go. So there's like a half a dozen people who would hand in hundreds of dollars worth of credit books to Jim Hanley's every week or month. And then they'd buy like the statues from Jim Hanley's and sell them on eBay. So there was a whole little ecosystem going on there. Well, and DC finding out about this big Southwest stuff, that they stumbled onto this Jim Hanley stuff, and they said, no, they said, Jim Hanley, if you want to sell DC Comics, you're putting an end to this. So Jim Hanley said, no more turning books in for credit. Meanwhile, they kept this whole thing quiet and like let that woman go. They didn't even like, they just wanted the whole thing kept quiet, and they let that woman go, whoever it was. That's the story I heard back in the day.
Yeah, going by what your story is, from what I'm hearing, if these things weren't like actually stolen or anything like that, and they were like given back, it doesn't sound like there was any laws broken.
No, not in the Jim Hanley's thing. There wasn't.
Yeah,
but in the there may have been laws broken with this woman self-distributing to DC Comic, and she was like a long-time DC employee, really respected.
See, I want to hear. I would love for a book to come out that talks about that kind of stuff and what was going on in the 70s with the mafia getting a hold of books. You know,
what's his name is writing a book about that. Robert.
Really?
Yeah. He's writing a book about it. He wrote an article on it in like Comic Book Artist 6 and 7, I think it was, that I bought just for the long articles on that.
Well, I know what I want to be keeping an eye out for. I love that stuff.
Yeah, I'll get you the numbers for him.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, but Rich Johnson had nothing to do with writing. He wrote about that as it was happening, and it's like the Jimmy. They used to call him Jimmy Bucks. You'd turn in your comics for Jimmy Bucks, and that made the news. That made the sort of the comic book news that was going on, and Jim Hanley had ended. But the other story behind the story, the bigger story, didn't make the comic book news. DC kept that quiet.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, man. That is cool. I want to jump over here real quick to this Aquaman run from the 90s. Charlton 66 pointed out because of Jim Calafor here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Charlton 66, I think, knows him pretty well. He's got a lot of commission work from this guy. But I want to get up here with Peter David. This Aquaman run that Peter David did should, in my opinion, be right up there with his incredible Hulk run from Marvel. The stuff he did in this Aquaman book were fantastic, pulling from like Atlantis Chronicles and stuff. It's probably one of his most underrated works ever. But what cracked me up about it is that when old Aquaman here, Arthur Curry, got all grim and gritty and started looking like the big pirate with the hook and wearing the gladiator stuff and getting all mean again and stuff, he ends up getting laid, and he's like sitting up in bed going, is that all I needed? I don't feel so grim and gritty now. You know,
I used to play touch football with Jim Calafiore. We used to have Marvel Wizard touch football games. So
I heard about those.
Nice
games.
Guy.
Wizard would like brag in their editorials about those games. I can't believe you were in those. Yeah, that's hilarious.
I don't remember ever seeing them mention them in the editorials, but yeah, they might have mentioned the softball games more.
Maybe that's what it was. Yeah. Wow, this is hilarious.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy. Tall too.
Let me see here. I was going to touch on these Batman books real quick. These
What do we
one
got?
shot, Bane,
Oh,
Batgirl, Mr. Freeze, Poison Ivy. Can you know why these came out? You remember what was going on around this time?
was this the break his back one era?
No, this is Batman and Robin by Joel Schumacher movie. So they came out with all these
Oh,
one shots. And
that's right.
yeah, and I think I have one or two of these, but this was the big one. This was the big one. Paul Dini wrote a Mr. Freeze story,
Ah, okay.
and Mr. Freeze became like this huge phenomenon in the 90s because of the Batman the cartoon, where they changed him into like this tragic figure with his wife. I think that episode won an Emmy or something with it.
Oh,
So when people saw Paul Dini coming to Mr. Freeze, this book took off. This book I have two of them, but this book was like hot for a couple years.
I just noticed Linda Medley did the coloring on this. I had no idea
Mhm.
she colored for. She's the one who did Castle Waiting,
Yep.
which is
Yep.
fairly well known for at least well
The
well
bearded
loved
nun.
indie book. Yeah, I had no idea she colored for DC.
Yeah, for people who don't know, Castle Waiting tells the story of all the fairy tales after the happily ever after. What happens? The story still continued, and she had some brilliant stuff in her that was kind of funny, and then some of the stuff just kind of made me shake my head. But when what was the? I can't believe I'm going blank on the Bill Willingham series where he brought in all the fairy tales.
Right.
Oh, I can't think of what it's called now. That's unreal. We drank my coffee, but
Fable.
I think he actually gave her a nod or so or something
Right.
there. Here.
And it's called Castle Waiting because weren't they all stories told by people waiting in a castle?
I think so. Yeah, I have no. I haven't read those in over 20 years, no doubt in my
I
mind.
haven't read them in a while either. Mine the comic says 97. I was all in Magic the Gathering and starting to get into European comics. Yeah, I used to play Magic. We played Magic the Gathering at Marvel at lunchtime in the early 90s. We had a good time playing that.
Well, in my younger
Like
days, us
95.
us D&D guys and us White Wolf guys who grew up role playing when you card players popped up, we were just sort of like, what is this shit?
Most of the guys I played cards with were D&D players, so
yeah.
and
then Pogs were going on at the same time. I never figured that one out. Oh yeah, we got to talk about Batman: The Long Halloween here. This was the phenomenon.
That's one of the few Batman comics I've enjoyed over the year. I'm going to say recently, but it was 1997.
Yeah, I know. I've ended up having two sets of this, and I've got like half a set now. But this is the only Batman series that I have been offered money for the original issues that I could not say no. Even people who aren't into comics love this story. I mean, they like Batman. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I mean, I have been offered twice. I was like, I can't turn that down. But it legitimately is, I think, one of the best Batman stories, at least the top 5. You know what I mean?
I bought the TPBs of it, so I never had the original issues. But I remember hearing stuff about it and saying, "Oh, Tim Sale, I like Tim Sale." So it was like one day years ago, I was looking for a Batman story, and that was the one I ended up getting. Because I do that sometimes. I'm not a big Marvel or DC guy, but occasionally I'll be like, I want to read a Hulk story, so I'll try and find one. And often it's really hard.
Yeah, I looked up because I remember I noticed Tim Sale before he became big. It was on a Batman. It's that anthology series with Blades. He did a 3-issue arc with James Robinson, and then I would see this guy do pinups and image books and stuff. And he reminded me of like a Rick Leonardo back then.
I first liked his stuff. He did a book called The Amazon for was it Kamiko? It may have even been the Kamiko. It was like the early 80s. It was the first time I saw him. And
Tim Sale in the early 80s? That's wild.
No, late 80s. Pardon me, late 80s. Yeah. I think, or mid. I think it was, I can't remember if it was, it was Tim Sale. It was the first time, and I really enjoyed it. It was good stuff. Then I also liked him on an image book what was the name of it? Oh crap! What was the, I can't remember the name of it. It's the one that Jim Lee started in his Death
Death
Blow
Blow.
and
Yeah,
his Frank Miller style. And Tim
yeah.
Sale kind of took it over. And once again, it was a book that used all this sort of Catholic mythology that was going on. And there were like bishops with guns, and it was sort of like Henry Lincoln Light, but it was real cool. If you ever get a chance to read Death Blow from the early to mid 90s from Image, read it. Brandon Choi wrote it, and Tim Sale drew most of it. That just when Tim Sale leaves, you can leave too. But Tim Sale drew Grendel around issues 30 to 40. Yeah, I think I was done with Grendel by then because Matt Wagner wasn't writing them anymore. But I don't really remember. I'm going to go back and look at which Grendels, because I love the earliest Grendels first. The Christine Spar Grendel, the guy who did the Jam Grendel, but then after a while, it was like, what's his name? Matt Wagner was only writing the Grendel, and then he wasn't even writing it anymore. So it's kind of like, do I really care about all these other people doing Grendel? And I didn't.
I'm sitting here realizing 1 year at HeroesCon, I got Tim Sale to sign a bunch of stuff for me, and I bet you anything I sold my #1 of the Batman Halloween that he signed, but I kept the Superman confidential.
You're just remember. You're like, I sold that one. I didn't even realize it.
That's hilarious. It's all right. Yeah.
Did you ever read Big Bang comics?
Who?
Big Bang comics here?
Yeah.
From Image.
Yeah.
I never read that. A lot of people liked that, but I don't think I ever read it.
To me, it's fun, and the styles in the Big Bang comics when they were telling stories, it's from that era. If you like the Silver Age, it's going to feel like the Silver Age with the Watchmen and all that stuff. The little winks and the nods, and it seems like every now and then they'd have like a tongue-in-cheek joke to make it a little bit more adult. But I don't understand the people what made people grab onto it and follow it for years and stuff and swear by
Scott
it.
Connor just said Bernie Maralt did the Jam. There we go. That's his name I couldn't think of. And I'm still not, I always call him Maralt, but I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his last name. A little wordplay from Scott Connor too. The words Tim and Sale, or what hell else is all about. Offer him enough money, and it's the sale is on.
Scott knows me in real life. He's seen some stuff. He's seen some stuff. Yeah, but Big Bang comics, I had a couple of them, man, and I liked them. They were just fun, little stories, I hate to say that way. Here's what he's talking about. This particular issue.
It was Kamiko.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let me switch back here. Okay. Interesting. I like how people get to see us go down memory lane here and figure things out. This is how I talk about comics in real life.
1989, Tim Sale. Steve Siegel is the writer.
Nice.
So this is the first time I saw Tim Sale.
Yeah, Tim Sale. Now, by the time I got around to seeing him at HeroesCon, Heroes, the television show, this had been the mid 2000s or something. But Tim Sale, he had a handler. He had a big line. And it looked like he'd made his money for the TV show Heroes. So, yeah, I mean, he was still cool. That, huh? Yeah, he was still cool, but he would have people saying they're not now. Tim is working on a commission, and he wouldn't even look up, stuff like that.
Right.
I never read it, but the Big Bang and the 1963 characters appear in a dream sequence and a touch of silver.
Oh, okay.
Now, this Touch of Silver and Touch of Bronze books, I'm going to have to pick them up. People always go back to them that are into comics. They kind of swear by them.
I've never read them, so I'll have to check them out. What did we lose? I think we did.
Am I back?
You're back. All right.
It told me that there's been a glitch with Windows 10 with StreamYard. I'm like, not today, sir. Not today. We're talking comics. This is life and death stuff, man.
Yeah.
I'm so glad.
Still around?
Where are we at? Where are we at? Yeah.
Era.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
And this was an era I was gone. Len Kaminsky. I'd like to know more about this guy because it was like he could write a nice, fun book, but it's like he never blew up. You know what I mean? Like he never took off.
He's an editor at Marvel.
Really?
Yeah, worked with him. I still see him on Facebook. But he's had he has social anxiety issues now, though. He talks about on Facebook every now and then. So.
Oh well, I want to find him on Facebook because I loved his comic book work.
On my friend list, he's there.
Oh man, I'm gonna be creeping on your friends list. I want to be like, be cool, man. Be cool, man. You know.
Yeah, Len was a good. Like I said, he was at Marvel in the early '90s. The one thing I always remember about Len is he was always complaining loudly. He couldn't believe. I think he had gotten a divorce right around that time. He had started at Marvel, and his wife had gone on Oprah to complain about him.
Oh,
so he was always like, "Who gets to go through a divorce and then have your wife complain about you on national TV?" So he would always kind of bring that up and just kind of like shake his head. He'd be like, "Oh."
Yeah, you get to be like, yeah, my wife's got Oprah on her side. You know, that's so wrong. Oh my God. All right, Bone. Now this is blowing my mind. Okay, because it's 1997. I think Bone had been around for. I'm gonna have to look this up, but I swear I thought Bone came out in 91, and they're just on issue 19 in 1997.
These are the reprints from Image.
Let me look at this. Let me look. Yep, there's the icon. Yep. I'm so glad you pointed that out because I was sitting here very confused. But have you read Bone? You like Bone?
Yes.
Because I got a story.
I got into it very late.
All right. I can't remember if Scott was there, but my buddy Tim Anderson was definitely there with Jeff Smith. Jeff Smith has an issue of Bone. I think it's issue 16 that I love because of the storytelling and the art that he did. You were in the forest with Bone and Thorn with the rat creatures around. A big lightning storm's going off. You played with the lightning and black and white, panels and lighting to tell the story. You were there, and I loved it. You could actually hear the lightning cracking, So there's this big line for Jeff Smith. People are like, "Oh yeah, I love Bone," and he's just signing away. So when I get up there, I put my hand on the book right before he signs it because I got something to say. I said, I've read thousands of comics. I said, I've read all of Bone, but what you did in this book stands out as one of the top 5. I was talking about the technique. I sound like I'm more kissing his ass than anything, but I mean, I came off very well. You know what I mean? I'm like, no. So then all of a sudden he started talking about, I think, Charles Vess, and he sent those pages out to people for that issue who liked what he did. He said he was experimenting with his storytelling in that issue. So he's all happy somebody noticed. We had a great conversation. There's a line of people waiting. My buddies are behind me, and he goes, "All right." He's got a brace on his hand so to keep his wrist straight. And he's, "All right, who am I signing this to? What's your name there, sir?" And all this stuff. And I went, "Tim, sign it to Tim." He went, "What?" I went, "Tim." He went, "Spell that." Tim. He went, "Oh, Tim." He made fun of my accent, and I got a good laugh out of me, and I've got 80 people laughing. I love the story, man. It's one of my good ones.
Yeah, Bone, I got into it very late. I can remember it was after the Image run. So it was back to doing cartoon books. And I remember getting like the first 20 issues of the Image run for $20 off of eBay.
Yeah. Okay. Image run. I got you. Yeah.
So it was so that's when I started reading Bone, probably around issue 28 or so. So it was near the end, probably early 2000s before I started reading Bone.
I was finding Bone left and right in flea markets, and they were signed by Jeff Smith. So I've got like a ton of like his stuff signed just by accident and stuff, plus what I took to him. But I warn people that with Bone, you'll get halfway through it, and when he gets to this mountain lion named Rockjaw, the book kind of gets darker, and
Bone. Yeah, but I wasn't actually buying it in the late 90s, but it's like, I don't know, some book, I don't know why that took me such a long time to get to, but it did.
It's excellent. I love what it did, What do we think of Hawkeye? Underappreciated character. What's wild is
I think Hawkeye is the most appreciated, underappreciated character. You don't know how many people I know love Hawkeye and think he's an underappreciated character. I'm always just like, wow, another person who loves Hawkeye. But they always say that. They're always like, I think he's an underappreciated character. I really love him. I'm like, people either say that or they never mention Hawkeye.
Well, see, I think Hawkeye is exactly where he needs to be because it matches his personality in the comics. Hawkeye is one of those characters where the life imitates the art. He always thinks that if Captain America wasn't there, even though he looks up for him, he would be Captain America.
Yeah.
So for people in the real world being like he's an underappreciated character, well, no wonder. It's like you're him, you know.
Right. Right. I think a lot of writers have used Hawkeye pretty well, but most of the time he's standing around doing nothing.
Byrne and Grunwald, I think those guys handled him the best.
I think he was handled like Kurt Busey. I think he was in Avengers Forever. I can't remember now, but Avengers Forever is one of my favorite recent Avengers books. It was only 23 years ago, right? Or something like that. It was like the 1999. That's a recent Avengers book to me still.
Oh, that's okay. Yesterday, I just got around to completely reading the Skrull War from the 60s, you know, early 70s. I mean, I've read a piece here and a piece there, and I read this thing, and I'm like, maybe I needed to be there. You know?
Yeah. No, it wasn't. I remember the main problem is Neil Adams left it. If Neil Adams had drawn the end of it,
yeah,
everybody would like it better. But you go from Neil Adams to Sal Buscema, I think.
John
Buscema. I forget which Buscema. No offense to either of them. I like them both, but Neil Adams was doing new and different stuff with it.
Yeah,
and they weren't. So it's kind of
he had an MC Etcher splash page there that was just brilliant for the placement. And I had a feeling when I read it, I was like, that was his idea. I could just feel it. You know what I mean? There was stuff he did.
He said he plotted that all. He was doing it Marvel style. So he would plot it all and draw it, and then Roy Thomas would script it.
Okay, I'm going to look at it with fresh eyes there then. Yeah. I got it. Okay, let me see. So you've already looked at some of this. Let me jump around. Bones, Books of Magic. I was there for this. I mean, I'll stop on every Vertigo book if we don't watch, but I'm going to jump on this. This is what we were talking about. This is why I think there's not many Image books out there that stand out. What I was saying.
Yeah.
Well, by this time, James Robinson had, Liefeld had been out, and everybody was picking up the pieces and stuff. Right. They gave Captain America his A back. I could talk about those books all day long, man, because I had the Wizard books going on. Everybody was jumping on those books. Oh, they were just on Guys in 1997. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if I was reading Cerebus by then yet. Like I'd read some of the early stuff, but I didn't, and I was buying the collected editions at some point. It may have been a year or two after this that I bought all the collected editions. Well, because like, for some reason I was really late to Cerebus. The first Cerebus I bought was Cerebus Biweekly, was on my pull list. And I started buying some of the later issues then, and I had some comic shop owner traded me for a bunch of Cerebus, but I wasn't reading it month to month until much later.
Have you heard of the Mercenary Sea?
I have heard of it, but I've never read it.
I never heard of it. And what we got here? We got another Neil Adams part. Neil Adams Dead Man.
Is that the new Neil Adams Dead Man? Yeah, I've heard not the one from the 60s, but the new one I've heard is quite. I read a few issues of it and was like, woo.
Yeah, I stay away from modern day Neil Adams stuff just because Batman Odyssey.
Mm-hmm. Oh, look, we get a new Conan #1 by Claudio Castellini. Oh, we lost Howler again. Microsoft 10 lets him down again.
Windows 10, man, in my back.
Windows 10.
It gave me that Windows 10 has been failing.
I was just saying we get a new Conan #1 this month with Claudio Castellini on the art.
I did not know that.
He was an Italian guy who was making his name at that time for doing some covers, but I don't know if I don't remember his Scott Neely. Remember when #1 issues meant something? No, it was too long ago for me to remember.
I think we lost those with the turn of the century.
Paolo Costa said Claudio Castellini created the design of my favorite character from Italian publisher Bonelli, Nathan Never. Yeah, I don't know him, not familiar with him at all, but I remember Claudio Castellini making he bit of an impact with the covers he was doing for stuff. He was doing these sort of pencil rendered covers that were pretty cool.
A lot of classics illustrated. There's Conan.
I didn't know there were this many classics illustrated out at the time. Valiant was doing them, huh? Were they reprints or new stuff? I wonder.
I'd imagine the reprints, but let me look because I have like a Tom Sawyer by Mike Plug from the 90s and stuff.
First Comics did a bunch of new classics illustrated in the 80s.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah. Valiant publisher. I would imagine these are reprints, but I never saw them in the store. I mean, this is the first I've ever heard of these. Conan #1 from the bar. I didn't even know. How long did they have the? I'm doing this thing. This is what you were talking about. I follow you now. Okay. All right. Curse of Spawn. Spawn's an interesting book. That and Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't know who's buying them, but somebody's been supporting those books for years.
Oh, yeah, Sonic sells well.
Oh, let me jump up here. This has got to be a reprint because it seems like this came out earlier.
What is that?
Oh, yeah, Dark Horse Classics. This Dark Empire book, when this came out, you talk about a hot book, whether it was worth anything or not. A lot of people do consider this the sequel to Return of the Jedi, a trilogy. These Dark Empire books, they take place years after the Dark Empire. I finally got around to reading them about 2 or 3 years ago, or sat down and reading them complete. Fantastic stuff. So good. Alien vs. Predator.
What was the favorite book you worked on? Well, besides my own books that I did independently, it's like I worked on all the Marvel. I was behind the scenes getting all the books ready for publication. So I can't think of anything that was a fail. It's like I just worked on everything. It's like there wasn't a Marvel book over the years that I didn't do something on. So I can't think of a favorite. It was just, I just enjoyed getting the books out. That was my job, doing the pay stuff, doing the production, getting them out. It was always fun to see stuff. That was the most fun part, to see the original art all the time. Because I can only imagine it's much less fun nowadays when the original art never goes into the office. So in those days, every piece of original art came to the office, so you could look at it all. That in itself was fun. Got to see all the, Todd McFarlane original art, Jim Lee original art, whoever was working there original art. Alex Toth covers. That was, you got to see all the, like I always say, when the, when the Alex Roth Marvels first came through, whoa, everybody was looking at that stuff. That was fun, getting the first look at Alex Toth Marvels was like fun because everybody was going to this. I think they were in the stat room for some reason. Everybody was making a pilgrimage over to the stat room to see the Alex Toth art originals that were there. So that was the fun stuff.
I'm just sitting here how I'd get fired so quick nowadays. So if I'm sitting there and Alex Toth or the Alex Ross stuff comes across me, I'm getting my phone out like, damn, it's good. Dave Dorman covers were wonderful on those Star Wars. They were. I'm looking here. The Dreaming was taken off. I think, didn't Sandman end by now, or they were winding up? Because they're starting to do the essential Sandman stuff where they're reprinting them.
Sandman. Let's see. Yeah. We can skip around.
Because I thought Sandman ended in 98. The Vertigo stuff is the stuff that stands
Sandman
out to me.
Theater, Sandman the Wake trade paperback.
So I guess it did wind up by now.
Yeah, I don't know what Sandman the Wake is. So I'm not a Sandman guy. So
Yeah, see, I can stop on all this Vertigo stuff. The Preacher was going on.
Elric.
We
This
got
was
some
some
Elric.
of the what's his name? Craig Russell Elric. That's good stuff right there. If you've never read the Dark Horse, Craig Russell Elric, it's all good stuff, and it's some of his most inventive artwork. Yes, Scott Connor said the Wake is the name of the last story arc in the Sandman.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
guess it just ended since the TPP is out.
Yeah, this is the Stormbringer story. This is the last story of the Elric and stuff, and I've got a bunch of these signed by Russell and stuff. But this time. Oh, this is a Dark Horse. I remember this stuff was started in Tops, so it must have moved around. But
it ended in Dark Horse, but it was that the Craig Russell Dark Horse stuff is just some of my favorite art of his. It's just really, really nice.
It's like it's pure Craig Russell. That's what's wild about it.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, what Craig Russell can do is that you really don't have to give him a script. You can sit there and just tell him a story.
Well, he adapts from text too. He adapts all that gaming stuff. So
yeah, and that's what I was getting ready to say. Sandman number 50, Neil Gaiman did an interview where he said he was just telling him what he thought the story should be, and he was like, "Yeah, just send it to me like that. I'll fix the rest of it." So the Elric stuff, that is some of the most pure Craig. And when I say pure, you just have to look at the art to get what I'm saying. This guy will create a piece of art, and he'll make it look like it's from the 1920s, and then he'll tell you why it looks that way. Right. They have low horizons and stuff. I could listen to that guy talk about art all day long, but that Elric stuff, that Stormbringer story is the last one, and it's got like the perfect ending for any character ever. You're like, of course that's how it ends. It's perfect. I get excited about the Elric stuff, but I just now recently.
I just recently was still coming out from Image. Never bought any of that.
Yeah. There's an issue of Gen 13 that popped up for some reason. It was like issue 13. I think Hellboy and a bunch of indie characters were hidden in it. Gen 13. I could do Valiant stuff. Ghost had a following back then from Dark Horse.
It did. I think because of the covers. Who did the covers again? Adam Hughes.
Yeah. But you got to understand the 90s. This was the era of the Bad Girl comics. Like, they even came up with like a femme fatale for Zorro named Lady Rawhide.
Not as much in '97, but it was still going on. Yeah,
we were coming there too.
Bigger.
Yeah. Hellblazer was at 115.
Yeah, I was never. I wasn't reading Hellblazer. I only read the early Hellblazer mostly.
Well, like I said, I've talked about it. Last couple years, I've been trying to. I've been averaging 17 cents to $1 a piece, getting all 300 issues of Hellblazer, and I've kind of stopped because some of those creative teams, just some of the stories were just not that good. To be honest, right. I found out probably the first 100 issues of Hellblazer, and then just the Warren Ellis stuff, the Ennis stuff. Yeah,
Richard Gordon stuff.
Yeah. But as I was finally starting to sit down and read those all the way through, I'm just like, oh, I've wasted money.
Scott Neely tells us Wildcats 8 had a Gene and Scott cameo. Loved Wildcats. I liked Wildcat. It's funny because I didn't buy any of those Image books at first. I gave them all 6 months. And then I tried a bunch of them with their 6th or 7th issue and went back and got the issues of the ones I liked. And Wildcats was one of the ones I liked. Stormwatch I liked too. I didn't even like the Savage Dragon, which I didn't start buying the Savage Dragon until a few years later, even to issue 70 or something.
I liked it. Well, I was right there. And I actually kind of liked a lot of the Image books. For one of the same reasons Alan Moore decided to come on and help write. I got a kick how they were just churning this stuff out and putting it out there. Little did I know years later we'd have different, 20 different teams with the word blood in them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know it was going to start getting derivative, but it was so fun just to have this energy and these guys just putting out these books. And you can tell the stories weren't well thought out, but there was, it was cool. It was something new back then. But the Spawn books, I'm one of the people that I don't give Todd McFarlane a hard time on his writing, because I remember the letters pages in his Spider-Man book where he was telling people, tell me how to be a better writer. Give it to me. He was asking. But when he brought Alan Moore on there and they brought in real writers, Wildcats got Claremont on them for a while.
Wildcats had Alan Moore on it. That was really good.
Well, I've got the whole run on my shelf right beside me. That's a classic.
The whole run too. Matter of fact, I have the whole run of Stormwatch was like my favorite of those early Image books.
I've got the Warren Ellis stuff right here in the box beside me. I just cataloged them last week. Yeah.
I bought Stormwatch up until the mid-20s when it started getting really mediocre. And Ron Lim started drawing it. And I hate to put down Ron Lim because I think he's a talented guy. But sometime in the mid-90s, he became the go-to guy for when you needed a whole book drawn in 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what he became. So once you become that guy, you only get called when a book. So it's like, to me, Ron Lim's work just took a nosedive. And I had a friend describe his work and during that period as, if they ever invented a machine that could draw, it would draw just like Ron Lim. And so when he kind of got on Stormwatch, I was just like, oh, I can't. I'm done with this. So it was like years later when I got soon later I got Stormwatch, when Warren Ellis came back on it, I jumped on and bought all those issues. Then I bought, I think it was Stormwatch Team Achilles came next. That was pretty cool that I kind of liked, but I dropped off on it for some reason. And the guy Chris, who used to work at the comic shop at that time, it was like one of the few books we had in common was Stormwatch. He's like, you don't have Stormwatch Team Achilles? So he found them all in the dollar section for him. And he found the other Stormwatch books I was missing, the Ron Lim ones. I was like, I guess I'm having the Ron Lim issues in my collection now. Oh, well. So I was like, now I have all the Stormwatch, including the Ron Lim issues, which I really didn't want because they're not very good. But I think Warren Ellis is just starting here with Stormwatch. What issue was it? I just saw an issue here.
31, 32, somewhere around in there.
No, it was a little later than that. Where'd it go? I know the alphabet. I know I can find
37 or 38.
Where is it? It was 48. Stormwatch Change or Die. This might be the end of it then.
Let me look here.
It's Stormwatch.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this went up to issue 50. Tom Rainey came on and did some great covers on this.
Right.
Tom Rainey, he might have started, I don't know, I think around 37 or 38, 36. Oh, man, it's in the high 30s. Ellis came on.
For a long time, his run on Stormwatch, to me, was the most influential writing because all the Marvel stuff, all the Ultimate stuff from the early 2000s was influenced by this. It was all retreading a lot of stuff Warren Ellis had done on Stormwatch and then the Authority.
Some of the stuff that he did, I started out thinking this has been done before. Grant Morrison came on Doom Patrol in the late 80s, whatever it was, and he basically killed all of Cooperberg's characters. That's what Ellis started doing on this. But as you read it more and more and more,
Ellis had something to say about his characters, though.
That's what I was getting ready to say.
He started killing some of the characters, but he had something to say about his new characters.
Yeah,
that's what the difference I think between that and I just don't think Ellis, Morrison has had much to say because he's never had an ending for his stuff. I think he's the master of the first issue. Yeah. He's the master of the early issues, but then they go nowhere because he really doesn't have much to say. And from my friend Bunch, who edited him on some of his books, when my friend Bunch was an editor at DC, he used to tell me there was a lot of illicit substances involved with Grant Morrison's writing, and sometimes he'd peter out. He'd lose interest near the end, and that's how they always read to me. So
now that we can see what we're talking about, I just realized I wasn't sharing. Now, the thing with Ellis, what you were saying, with Ellis having a direction and ending, that's how he won me over through Watch with that stuff. He was definitely going somewhere with it, and it went all the way to Authority, and he was building up to it. And that's what made the book unpredictable. You didn't know what was going on. A guy comes on a book, starts killing off the characters. He has half of them fired in the very first issue he comes on. They're just fired. The guy with no nose, you're out of here. And all this stuff.
So the weirdest thing was in between Stormwatch Volume 1 and Volume 2. I mean, Warren Ellis wrote Volume 1. Then they launched Volume 2, and it only went about 11 issues before he turned it into the Authority. But in between those two issues, he killed off all the characters, or half of them. He killed off like half of the Stormwatch team in Aliens Wildcats.
In Aliens in Aliens, and that was a hard book to find for a while, but I think I found it.
No Stormwatch fans knew about it or ordered it, including me. I had Stormwatch on my pull list. I didn't have Aliens Wildcats on my pull list. So like Stormwatch Volume 2 came out, I was like, what the hell happened? And it was like, see, Aliens Wildcat. And it was nowhere to be found because nobody ordered Aliens Wildcat.
I think it was genius. I loved it because here he is hired to do this big Wildcats Aliens crossover. And what does he do? I'm going to use this for my book.
Yeah. Did you have Stormwatch on your pull list?
No, not back then. No, I'd pick up an issue here and there, but actually, I think it was Charlton 66 or Comic Core. I think it was Charlton 66. They sent me a bunch of the trades and some of the issues that filled in my gaps. Yeah,
I'm just telling you, if you were an actual Stormwatch fan and had it on your pull list at the time, like I was, and every other Stormwatch fan, there weren't a lot of us. That was annoying as hell. I'm telling you, I didn't get that issue till 5 years later.
Oh, it was hard to find. I mean, I'm right there with you. I looked for it for years.
Yeah, it was nowhere. I think I finally ordered it maybe when I probably ordered it online or on eBay or something when it was finally available. When finally no one cared about Stormwatch anymore and the prices came down on it, I got it for like $3. Because that was also like a $20 issue for a long time because no one had it. And
looking at the comments here.
Yeah.
Just to slow down here. Was Spawn number 10 with a Cerebus in it? Yeah. Spawn number 10 by Dave Sim wrote that, and he put Cerebus in there. And I think there was this, Todd McFarlane brought in Alan Moore, who was Frank Miller. I'm missing some, Neil Gaiman, and then Dave Sim each wrote an issue of Cerebus.
Right.
And I think Dave Sim actually topped Alan Moore's issue with this Cerebus with Spawn number 10. It's definitely worth getting.
Right. Scott Connor says Craig's work on Ring Cycle are some of the best comics ever. That's true. Any period, man. I love Craig Russell's Ring Cycle stuff.
They're talking about the World Newton theory. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, it's not letting me. It's doing this weird thing.
Connor says it's hard being Craig Russell fan in a Rob Liefeld world. Well, it's not a Rob Liefeld world anymore, at least. So.
Oh, it will never be reprinted in a Stormwatch collection again. The Aliens versus Wildcats you're talking about?
Yeah.
All right. So we'll get back over here, man. I'm having a good time now, man. I can talk about this Warren Ellis Image stuff forever.
Strangers in Paradise 6 didn't come out, and I didn't start buying Strangers in Paradise yet. Strangers in Paradise was one of those books where I tried a couple of issues and was underwhelmed by it. But then but it's like a book I should like. I'm like, I should like this book because it's an indie book by sort of an auteur artist. I like his art. So somewhere around Strangers in Paradise 10, I was just like, I'm just putting it on my pull list. And I'll buy it. I'm like, I'm sure I'll like it eventually. And it did. But it's like when I've just tried an issue or two here or there, I was kind of like, eh.
I'm glad you brought this up. You still there?
Yes.
Okay. I'm glad you brought this up because I was going to tell you that's exactly how I finally was able to enjoy Strangers in Paradise in trade. And Terry Moore signed some of this. I actually talked to him at Baltimore Con. But when I pulled my Strangers in Paradise stuff down, I found my missing Jonah Hex that Tim Truman signed. Gets a good day. I've been looking for that, But yeah, Strangers in Paradise, this is another one of those books where I'm like, if you want to go back to the 90s and feel like you're watching an episode of Friends, if you're into that and stuff, make sure you get these in trade. I'm actually getting rid of a huge run of them because I think in trade, in my opinion. You got to have the whole thing going. Once you read them in trade, it's so much more of a satisfying read because he comes up with some ridiculous stuff with what's her name? I can't believe I'm forgetting one of the main characters' name. Yeah. Having her be whatever it was, a government agent, spy, whatever.
One of the Parker girls.
Yeah. With his, the way she acts and as flighty as she can be and all this stuff. And all of a sudden you find out like she's a killer, I'm like, come on. Oh, Catch-U. Yeah, they're right on it, man. I mean, need more. Oh, let's see what Gore Vidal has to say here. When I returned to comics, Strangers in Paradise is one of the first comics I read in their entirety. Yeah. His favorite Texas writer. I didn't know Moore was from Texas.
Yeah, I think we went through this with Gore Vidal one time. I don't know, maybe it was on a different thread. Then I made fun of him for being from Texas. Because I like to mess with Texas, despite what the T-shirts say.
I'm not going to go to my shelves, but this Mad magazine I have. Oh. I still have those. I keep them on the shelves over here so I could grab them. I love the first 15, 20 issues of Mad magazine, and this was reprinting the three issues at a time from the beginning. Yeah, those I highly recommend those, man. I like the early years. And just to be all selfish here, man. Okay. Probably one of my favorite series of all time. And it had just picked up right when Tony Harris kind of got off of it here. But these stories in the 30s are fantastic with Solomon Grundy, Batman, Green Lantern. It was starting to build up. This was a good time. This is one of the books that kept me hanging on there for a while to get these books.
Yeah, I read them all when the omnibuses came out and enjoyed the series.
Yeah, that was one of the last great runs at traditional runs at DC here. I'm going to fly up here, see if there's anything else. The Spectre book right here. I've got friends who have the entire run and they swear by it. They love this series. Tom Mandrick and John Ostrander.
Savant Guard by Image. I think I may have bought that. I don't really remember, but I think there was some reason. I remember that there was some reason I may have bought that. It gives us no credit, so I don't remember the reason, or it may have been an earlier series called Savant Guard. I don't know.
That looks like the Dream Queen from Alpha Flight by Jim Lee back in the day. Maybe it's the hair. I don't know. That reminds me of an Alpha Flight cover with the Dream Queen from like 90 or something, 1990.
I think somewhere in my collection are a few issues of Savant Guard.
Nice. I know you're into guy, but right here, this whole 4-issue miniseries by The Shade, you have to get it. It's fantastic. Mike Zuliar.
I think that was in the omnibus.
It is.
Yeah, I read those. Yeah. That was in the omnibus.
Yeah, there's a lot that was very hard to find. I ended up actually picking up some issues later on in the years. There was like an issue. It seems like you always can never find a number 3 or something.
Oh, yeah.
And here's probably one of the most underrated series ever during the 90s or any decade was the Sandman Mystery Theater that Matt Wagner and Steve Seagal was coming out, and Guy Davis is still on here. Oh, man.
that was one of these series I never had on my pull list, but I used to collect the issues around Marvel because I'd always see them and I'd be like collect. I still have them somewhere. So I used to read Sandman Mystery Theater because it's funny. While I was at Marvel, I always had a pull list because I was an indie guy. So but there were certain things I just find around Marvel and just keep, like Sandman Mystery Theater was one of them because Matt Wagner was writing it, Guy Davis was drawing it, and I enjoyed those ones. But I never actually bought them. But I probably had like 20 issues or so of it.
Yeah, they kept it with that pulp feel. I mean, it felt like the 30s when you read this thing. Yeah, and Guy Davis is missed very much.
I like the Guy Davis artwork. I don't know if it was on my channel. Oh, it was when I was showing off the Dark Horse. Someone said he retired a while ago. I was like, oh, I didn't even know that.
Wait a minute. Is this Shaky? What was his name? No, Paul Pope. Sorry, man. I didn't even know this came out. The ripoff.
What was it?
I never heard of this. Paul Pope, the one-trick ripoff.
Oh, yeah, I got that one. I remember. I think that was originally serialized in Dark Horse Presents. That's where I first saw Paul Pope.
Yeah, I'm wanting his Battle Boy. I keep meaning to buy that. That was his. He had an idea for Commanding. They didn't let him do it, so he took off to another publisher, turned it into Battle Boy. But he's an interesting cat. I can't get a finger on him, and I'm always finding out stuff he's put out elsewhere. That is wild.
I liked his, what was it, 100%? That was pretty good.
Yeah. Anything else? Night Force. They brought back Night Force for a while for you 80s guys.
They brought that back in the 90s?
Yeah, Marv Wolfman came on, but it didn't have Gene Colan.
Yeah, I remember getting it. I don't remember this one. Let's see, Night Force. Okay, look at that. House of Pain.
Well, if he's still watching, if he's still watching, Charlton 66 is the guy that kind of turned me back. He turned me on to it. So yeah, when Night Force came back in the 90s, I remember that well because I was kind of rolled my eyes. I'm like, what are they doing?
I bought Night Force in the 80s, and I bought it. Who was it? They just did one, like, I don't know, 5 years ago now. They relaunched it with Marv Wolfman and who was it? Steve? Was it Yates?
Not sure. Did not follow it. Did not follow it at all.
It was one of those old timers. I can't remember who from the 80s, but it was pretty well done when they did it. I guess it was volume 3.
Nice.
Even though he doesn't use volume numbers.
Yeah. Now here's Kurt Busiek's Astro City, and the first 2 volumes you have to get all of them. They're so good. They're so good. These Alex Ross covers. There's a little twist on the alien invasion. It kind of like takes some tropes of traditional comic books, and you see them from a different perspective and stuff.
Right.
And they're so good, man. They're very, very rereadable. You know,
that good stuff. No, it's funny. I jumped on Astro City late too, but I bought some trades of it. Then it was on my pull list in like the early 2000s, but it got so annoying because they kept relaunching it, and I kept having to re-put it on my pull list. I was just like, oh. So finally, like DC picked it up, I think it was, and relaunched it, and I was like, I'm tired of. I'll just buy them the collected editions. I'm tired of having to track down each series. And then it ran for like 50 issues. They never relaunched it. I'm like, and I only got the collected edition sporadically, so I'm missing like half of it.
Well, he hit a spurt there where he was putting out one shots and maybe a two issue miniseries or something.
That was it, right?
That was a pisser. Those were the ones you're like, he did what? When did this come out? What? Where?
I'm tired of trying to track these down. And it's like I'm going to the comic shop every week. It's not like it's hard for me, but I just don't know they're coming out.
Now here's something I find unusual. I never even knew this came out. This slipcase, maybe this is where the slipcase isn't on it and it's the book. But I don't remember a $90 hardback of Kingdom Come coming out a year after.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I
remember people being excited about it. I never got it.
Somebody, Gorbadal mentioned next.
Nexus
Oh,
from the beginning.
yeah.
I've wanted to go back and read Nexus from the beginning for like 20 years now, and they're all on my shelf. But I still haven't.
Well, I tell you what, I tell you what, I have probably got an assortment of probably, if I had to guess, 10, 12, maybe, 13. I don't have very many. I have tried to get into Nexus. I like Steve Rude. I like the it kind of started reading to me like it was Space Ghost without you knowing it's Space Ghost. You follow what I mean? I got I got the Magnus Robot Fighter versus Nexus. I've got the Madman meets Nexus and all this stuff. I've read a couple of issues. The Nexus has popped up. I can't get into it. I'm one of the few people.
You got to get the original Nexus series.
I guess I wanted to like it.
I bought the first color issue of Nexus that came out way back when from, I think, First Comics. And then immediately, because first there were 3 black and white issues. And then there was the first color issue, which was either from Eclipse or First Comics or Pacific, somewhere in the early 80s. And I jumped on with that. And then when they put out a collected edition, one of the early collected of the 3 black and white issues. So I got that. And I got the very first, and it was on my pull list all through the 80s. And what's interesting about Nexus's story, it's nothing like Space Ghost in reality, is he's
an assassin hired by a space entity.
No, he's not quite an assassin. He's an executioner.
Okay. Yeah.
So he was there's some giant space entity that gave him these powers to be his executioner.
And he dreams about him?
Well, what happens is he has to he ignores it as much as he can because he doesn't necessarily want to be an executioner, as anybody would want to be. But Ilum, I think, is the name of his planet. So he's on this like sort of planet, which was kind of given to him. This planet where there's no native people. It might even be a moon. There's like no natives to it, but people come there. And word came out, and the Merc. That's all coming back to me. I haven't heard it in years. The Merc is the guy who gives him dreams of these evil guys, and he has to go and execute the guy.
Yeah.
Or the dreams won't stop. So he does that. So he's got a certain reputation in the galaxy as this righter of wrongs and killer of tyrants. So where he is he becomes this kind of legend, and where he is on this planet, all of a sudden all the outcasts of society are attracted to it because they're running from tyrants. So they end up on his planet. So most of the time he's trying to just run his, and he's not really a politician. He's trying to keep, and they look to him for leadership, but really he's an executioner. He doesn't know how to run a planet. So, so it's like this whole balancing act between him going off on an adventure and being an executioner, and him running this planet. And of course, there's people who want to kill him, all these tyrants, because they don't like him executing tyrants. Oh, Gore Vidal says the first colored issues were published by Capital. That's it, I think. I remember ordering them from Bud Plant in 1983. Yeah, it was wonderfully strange and imaginative. That's how. Since he left his own series and guest starred in things, he's less imaginative. There's still good Steve Rude stuff, but it's less imaginative than his own. Like, get the first however many issues, 50 issues that Steve Rude drew, and read those ones.
Yeah, and I know that I had some Steve Rude issues, and then all of a sudden it was like it had an artist a month come on there and fill in for him or something. And that's around the era I tried to start reading him the first time around. Yeah. I have no idea when this was.
That stuff isn't as good. The solid Steve Rude, Mike Barron stuff, first 40, 50 issues is the best stuff.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and
that's okay. But
it's cool. Well, that made me think. I realized this. My phone was supposed to alert me, but Steve Rude has a Kickstarter going on now. He hasn't. Every year he used to put out a sketchbook, and I've got one or two over here personalized. Well, he's going to come out with a few. And my phone was supposed to alert me because you can get an early bird special. But anyway, if you get this and back it up on one of the levels, you can get one of two or maybe both of them really cool Nexus T-shirts, and I want that.
Ah,
So,
neat. Paul
Yeah.
Costa says, I love the whole cast. Judah, Dave, Sandra, Mez, Tyrone. Tyrone becomes a major and starts trying to buy good stuff. The whole cast of Nexus.
Who's the monkey with the mohawk?
That's Judah.
Yeah. I liked him. Yeah, I remember liking him. I got him in a issue of Crossroads where Eclipse tried to come out with a 4-issue miniseries and 2 of them each one.
And Tom Bagley, yes, Paul Smith did fill in midway in Nexus, right? He was the one really good fill-in artist in Nexus. He didn't mind Steve Rude, being away that month that Paul Smith was in, but they had some other guys who were just not Steve Rude,
I'm so glad you bragged on Paul Smith. He's one of my favorites, man. He's so underrated.
I still like that. It might have been around this time. What was that Image book he did?
Leave It to Chance.
Leave It to Chance. That was good stuff.
I have all those. Yeah. I did some video where I'm talking about underrated books of the 90s or something, and that was like right there. He
sells his artwork on Facebook too. I know my friend bought a couple things from him. So if you're looking for some Paul Smith artwork, just sketches he's done now too. He's always putting up sketches on Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah, I try to follow him and Fred Himbeck. That's right. The Max, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, before the cartoon came out and stuff, I love the Max. Still love it. I'm one of those people. That's one of the books that kind of keeps me stuck in the 90s because I feel like that Max stuff came out just yesterday.
Right. Yeah. Paul Costa says the creator-owned adventure series in the 80s have a problem. They had no planned ending, so they just kept going because it's selling. But all of a sudden, the main artist isn't there anymore, and the writer runs out. Yeah. That's what happened with Nexus. It's kind of like you want it to keep going, but usually the artist leaves, and you're like, yeah, it's just not the same.
Well, there's several books, not even just indie books, that I felt that way about over the years after I figured out what that feeling was. You know what I mean? Like, man,
being an indie guy and discovering early on that people, I'm told by my friends, I discovered that, people do comics earlier than most. I've been following creators since the beginning almost. So it's like, for me to follow a character, it just doesn't, but since I'm an indie guy, it's so rare that I drop a book. But in the 80s, when, what's his name leaves Nexus, it's kind of like, I guess I have to drop the book eventually. But then the book ended, I think, before.
I remember Dreadstar when Starlin officially left and even Peter David taking over and some of the stuff they were doing there. I was just sort of like, I don't know about this. That's the one that's given me that feeling of what you're talking about.
But there's only one book I've dropped in recent years. Unless it's a relaunch. Sometimes I drop things on relaunch because I'm just like, I don't want another volume. But Deadly Class was one of my favorite comics. And then they did some stuff writing Rise in the 20s that had just ruined it for me. They took this because they actually in Deadly Class, they actually had the kind of the courage to kill off their main character.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow. And I was okay with that. But then one of the things I like about indie comics is death is permanent. If they kill off a character, it's not like Marvel or DC where they kill off Wolverine and he'll be back. Not only will he be back, you'll have 4 more Wolverines first. Yeah, so they killed off the main character, and then they brought him back with just the stupidest, superhero comics where it's like, oh, he wasn't really dead. We mysteriously got him to a doctor real fast. So I gave him a drug to slow down his metabolism, even though he was stabbed through the stomach and disemboweled with a sword. So he was I gave him a drug and slowed down his metabolism and saved him. It was like, oh, come on. It was like and after that, it was like the stakes of life and death were gone because the book was about life and death. The stakes were always life and death. And then when the stakes stopped being life and death, it was always like, well, you're going to bring that guy back. You're going to bring that guy back. That guy's not dead, obviously. You're going to bring. No, it just like I just lost interest in it. And even though it was the same two creators who I thought were doing a good job, it just changed in tone so much. I couldn't. I would get an issue and I'd be like, oh, I got to read this. I'm not even into it. So I ended up dropping it. And it was like that was the only book I've dropped in 10, 20 years.
Yeah, the death in comics really it's really hurt the comics in the long run, and I think it goes all the way back to like 1990, maybe in the big one where it's on such a huge scale of half the universe died, they just bring them back. That I think people want to blame Jean Grey coming back over and over and a bunch of other things. To me, I think Infinity Gauntlet, as much as I love it, and it got made into a movie, that's when death became meaningless in comics. It really did.
I didn't even read Infinity Gauntlet because to me, Thanos was already dead. He died at the end of, in the 70s. At the end, I wasn't even interested. I'm like, bring Thanos back? I don't care. To me, the end of the story was Thanos died, and I'm fine with it.
Yeah, and Jim Starlin did write a story in Silver Surfer, showed how Thanos kind of came back and how everybody came back. At least they acknowledged it. But the death in comics,
I don't even care. I don't even care if it's a clever idea. If you're going to have a villain fall off a cliff and we don't see the body, I'm fine with you bringing him back. But if we kill him and we see the body and he's dead, you can't have it both. You can't have for me, you can't have it both ways. You can't have the drama of death without the consequences of it.
Yeah, when you
Scott Connor says, but Cerebus is back after death. No, he's not. He's still dead. He's just in hell telling jokes.
Yeah, is he in Dante's Hell? Is that who he's in?
Yes,
I've got some of it. Yeah, he's in Dante's Hell. Yeah.
There's me and like 1,500 other people still buying Cerebus.
It's the afterlife. Yeah. I had to quit. I had to quit getting it because I was just sort of like, I'm not going to lie, I was not enjoying it. But it'd be like on the second time around, I started getting those jokes. That makes sense, you know. I'll come back. Wait a minute. Somebody has said something that Red Rover Charlie was a pretty good miniseries where the dogs got human intelligence. I have a video where I'm talking to Garth Ennis about that, making sure that it's not a prequel to Crossed, if you're into Garth Ennis stuff. But Red Rover Charlie is one of my favorite books of all time. I'm real protective of that one. Yeah,
I do want to get some actual issues of Crossed one day. I've read them digitally, but I don't have any actual issues.
I've got some of the issues that Alan Moore wrote. I don't know if it was the maxi series or whatever it was, but I tried reading the earlier issues, and it's too much for me. I mean, I'm not going to go into what is there, but you don't want to play the biscuit game.
I love them because they're too much for me. They're like, to me, they're the ultimate. I'm not a big horror fan. Most horror stuff leaves me cold. That's the most horrible horror stuff I've ever read.
Reading Crossed made me realize I have grown up and I'm not a punk anymore. You know, that's the one where I'm like, you know, all of a sudden I have morals and I wouldn't let my kid read this. And I'm like, who said that? Who said that? Where did that come from?
But like I said, that's true horror. That book just makes you feel, that's horror.
That's a pretty good segue here with Garth Ennis coming into Hitman. Have you read Hitman?
I've never read Hitman. Just once again, that was when I read a couple of, and it didn't grab me, so I never really got into it.
Well, it's cool because all the things we've been talking about, this thing avoids. This thing had an ending. Like Garth Ennis had an ending he was working for. It had a Butch Cassidy sort of Sundance, you know, feeling to it. It's black comedy. It's fun, but what it is Garth Ennis. They said they had this big event with the annuals at DC where these aliens would come down and these aliens would be responsible for making new heroes. Well, Garth Ennis said, okay, I'm going to give my guy X-ray vision and telepathy, and he's a hitman in Gotham City. He just gets hired and he'll only kill bad guys. I mean, he'll pick and choose. And they brought in aspects of hell. There were demons involved in this and stuff, right? So he comes in here and his eyes are all messed up, but he hangs out at a bar. And, you know, Garth Ennis doesn't like superheroes, so everybody was surprised when he brought in Green Lantern. But his first job was to go in and kill the Joker. and he ends up meeting Batman, but he throws up on his boots. It's black. This thing has a touch of like Monty Python humor if you can see it. You know? So to get a hold of Catwoman when he needs to see her, he finds a dead cat and puts it on a spotlight so she has a cat signal. And then it just gets wilder and wilder as it goes on. There's zombies at a zoo or something at an aquarium. So you have like zombie penguins running around and all this stuff. But in the meantime, it's got a cast of characters going on, and he's out killing people and just has these great adventures. And it was like, I think 60 issues. He had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And people, in my opinion, in the last 2-3 years, people are just now picking up on this book.
Yeah. I'm like pretty big in the 90s. Like I tried maybe one issue. You know what it was? It broke. I'm gonna have to go back and read it again. It broke that rule for me that just in concept. I don't even think it actually broke it. I don't remember. That made me not like The Killing Joke. Mm-hmm. When I say in The Killing Joke, Batman and the Batman family are bulletproof. You can't walk up to them and shoot them with a gun. That's what we accept when we read a Batman book. If Batman existed in the real world, he'd get shot his first night out because gun fu beats kung fu every time. So it's like that's something we accept. We accept when Batman goes up against armed assailants, he can disarm them. Their guns are useless against him. Even though he's not bulletproof, guns are useless against him. The Hitman kind of breaks that rule. In that DC Comics superhero world, in general, guns are useless. So when you put a Hitman in there, where the gun is his main weapon and he kills people, it's kind of like that destroys the reality for me. It's just kind of, and that's why I never got into Hitman. Just the name kept me away. Just because I'm like, that's why I'm going to have to go back and actually read it, because sometimes the name can the concept can keep me away, even though when I go back and read it, I like it. Like I always point to Dexter as the example of that.
Yeah, this thing actually got further and further away from like being in the DC universe. You know, they had to acknowledge her in Gotham, but towards the end of it, it started acknowledging things in the real world, like Desert Storm. Him and his buddy were veterans of Desert Storm. They told some war stories, but that's what I'm trying to get at. It eventually acknowledged what you're talking about with the guns and everything that's going on out there and the shooting. I don't want to give away the ending and stuff, but what bothers you about it, they got away from. It started out like you're talking.
If it wasn't in the DC universe, I wouldn't have that prejudice against it at all. Too.
It kept getting away where it didn't remind you it was in the DC universe. But then all of a sudden, he had a great story. It was actually a great story where Superman just lands on top of a building beside of him around Christmas. He ends up cheering up Superman. To where Superman, and he had some things to say about immigration and stuff in it that, was like, yeah, that's how it's supposed to be and stuff. But he ended up cheering up Superman. Superman flies off, and then he turns around and finishes his hit. Superman didn't know that he had just came upon a crime. It was funny.
Albert Bailey says Garth Ennis Punisher is great. Yeah, I think Garth Ennis Punisher, that's hard to say, is a classic of the Punisher genre.
I don't know who remembers the Punisher there. Okay, I mean back in that day if you were there, but Punisher almost got ruined when it shouldn't have been by making him an agent of Bernie Wrightson was drawing the Punisher at Marvel Knights. I mean, that should have been great, but they made him an agent of heaven. Do you remember this?
Right. Punisher had lost its luster. It had lost its luster before Garth Ennis came along.
I was out. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. But Garth,
I'm just noticing Ninjak was the one acclaimed Valiant comic I was buying by Kirk Busiek and Neil Vokes. And it was pretty good. And I think that was the first time I read Kurt Busiek for any period of time. I read a little here or there of him, but this was the first series I had read.
Ninjak was the kind of hero that I could not get into. He was everything. You know what I mean? They made him a ninja and like a James Bond spy. I don't like those characters. I mean, Buckaroo Banzai is the only guy I can get by with having multiple.
This one was. I don't think this one wasn't that Ninjak. This one was more like Spider-Man. He was a teenager, and he was going through teenage angst kind of stuff. So this
Let me
wasn't
look
like
at
the super spy Ninjak. This was
really.
teenage living in the city Ninjak. Yeah.
Never heard of this. Never heard of
Yeah.
this ever.
It,
That's
it ran
amazing.
it ran fairly long. How many issues? It ran like 20 issues or something.
When it,
And I liked the Neil Vokes artwork too.
well,
That
I'll
was
tell you
pretty
what. Okay, when Valiant got bought by Acclaim and this format was coming on, I
right.
think the only thing I was really hearing about was Quantum and Woody. Never checked it out. Mark
Right.
Bright was on, but I think was Bart Sears still on EXO? I know they were doing some weird stuff with EXO.
I
Man
don't
of War.
during this period.
Yeah, well, that's the two that I kind of follow. I know Shadow Man was getting reworked, and video games and stuff were coming out, and they were going with a horror aspect. And they brought in some big horror writer from comics to work on them. Maybe Garth, I don't know. But
Tom vaguely says the Busiek Ninjak was a cross between Spider-Man and Shazam. So I don't have to reread that. I haven't read that in a long 20 years now, but it's still on my shelf. But yeah, if you ever get a chance to read this, it's it's Kurt Busiek and Neil Vokes, so it's going to be decent.
I'm actually writing a note now. I'll check it out.
Yeah,
I'm having like this. I'm just gonna have to get past this, man. I'm sitting here hearing this, and I'm like, I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
But get back to the Punisher I was talking about. Garth Ennis, for me, I hung in with the Punisher when he took over because in the first story he acknowledged something and just got past it. He told this great story about how the Punisher was on top of a building and he was holding a bad guy, and he drops him. And he's telling the story as the guy falls to the earth of him falling from heaven when he was an agent of heaven, and how he came back to earth. And he did it like in 2 pages. And I'm like, that's some damn good writing. He acknowledges it and he just gets down to business. And I thought that was fantastic. We didn't have a 6-issue arc of him escaping heaven and coming back to earth and being the Punisher. He just acknowledged it and got on. It wasn't a big deal.
Yeah. Just brought him back to earth. What else do we have here? You know, that Ninjak was solid.
I will check it out. But I keep seeing the Invisibles.
I've never read the Invisibles. That's the one my friend Bunch said. If he ever catches me reading, he's going to punch me. He just hates the Invisibles.
This is the one where Garth Ennis said that he was taking drugs while he came up with it, but this has everything in it. Aliens, conspiracy, karma, all kinds of philosophical ideas, all sorts of things.
Didn't he think they took the Matrix from this?
Yes, and there's aspects that they did. Yeah, but Warner Brothers owns DC and owns, you know.
And he's getting nothing.
But when you read it, it's not the Matrix story. They just lifted so much out of it. But he did things where you can tell Grant Morrison was just pulling stuff out of nowhere. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I'm on volume 5 of 7. I can't get through volume 5. They're not all winners, folks. He comes up with he comes up with like urban magic where if you pay attention to TV and somebody yelling outside and all this stuff, you'll pick up words, and that's how you get the words for a spell. This is a Boy. This drag queen right here is Boy. And you don't want to mess with her, man, because like she's like this voodoo priest that can like mess you up. I mean, he's got some really good ideas out there, but he threw everything in the kitchen sink on there while he was supposedly on drugs writing this. King Mob is him. He wrote himself into the story as King Mob.
Oh.
Like I said, it's like John Lennon is the god of rock and roll just because so many people worshipped him when he died. Pops up. The aliens have something like 48 letters in their alphabet, and if we hear anything past 26, it makes us sick. I think your head could explode. He just threw anything and everything in there. I mean, that's his baby. You can tell that's his baby.
I wonder who's doing Tarzan Dark Horse.
Well, that's actually the next thing I was going to ask you about if you were interested in that one.
I never read any of it, but I just remember that some Tarzan Dark Horse did some Tarzan and Dark Horse Presents Volume 2 and 3 that was really good.
Looks like it says Thomas and Yeats.
What was that?
Oh, I think it said Roy Thomas and Tom Yeats, maybe.
Okay. This is drawn by Tom Yates. It should be pretty good then. Because the one I have here.
Well, I remember there was there's a lot of Tarzan stuff coming out. It seems like Walt Simonson might have wrote something of Tarzan. Yeah. They were adapting. Sometimes they'd be adapting books. Sometimes they wouldn't. It was just fast and loose, in my opinion. Yeah. But they did come out with a one shot that I have where it's Tarzan in the future. He's like over 2,000 years old or something. And they just wrote it. They just referenced like a pulp story you should have read to know why he was immortal now. And they just went on with Tarzan. They've done some really good stuff with them.
This Trinity Angels, I think that was a Kevin McGuire book that didn't come out on time. I just remember it was a long time between issues.
I just know he had a creator-owned book there for a while where some dude had a scarf that he could turn into weapons. And I was like, what?
Weapon scarf.
I mean, you can get too silly for my taste, even having fun. Look at that. Touch of Silver came out. Thunderbolts was going on. Yeah, I remember Thunderbolts was pretty big there for a little bit because of the twist in it, before the Sixth Sense.
Untold Tales of Spider-Man. Is that the
Kurt Busiek? Yeah.
Pat Olaf, is it one? That was, I never read that series, but everybody said it was real good.
It was fun. It's one of those books that people remember it being so good because of what was around it when it was coming out. The Spider-Man books were dead at this time. And what Busiek did, see, one of the things, I'm trying to find it. Yeah, here it is. That's an annual.
It's an annual.
Okay. So what Kurt Busiek did is like if there'd be like a little guide somewhere in there. Okay, so say you go all the way back to the Steve Ditko era of Spider-Man, like number 3. Number 1 would fit in between 3 and 4. And then you'd get number 2, Untold Spider-Man, and it might fit in between 6 and 7. They were in between. One of the reasons
I'm actually not a huge fan of retroactive continuity like that, but I'm sure he did
what they were doing.
I'm sure he did.
Well, I hung in there until they introduced a Batboy character, and I'm like, I don't like introducing new stuff and saying it's retroactive if you've never seen them before in 40 years at this time or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of retroactive continuity. What do they call it? EQ. Everything you know is wrong.
Yeah. Well, this was supposed to have taken place to where I don't understand how you can have stories in between each issue and still be able to go back and read those originals and it didn't affect anything. Why are you reading these stories if they don't mean anything? Right. But I'm not big into those stories. Like that's why I don't give Bendis a lot of credit for Ultimate Spider-Man.
Oh, I hate it.
Right. I don't like these ideas. It's not that creative in my opinion when somebody else is giving you a whole puzzle.
I hate that. It's like how to take one issue and stretch it out into 6.
Well, it's one thing when you have 100 issues of Spider-Man that you can read that other people have created from scratch, more or less, and build upon itself, and all you're doing is just switching the pieces around. You've got the whole story in front of you. You're just switching things around to make it your own. I just can't get into stuff like that.
Yeah, I read a little of it.
Yeah,
it's just what
I know. And I know people that's their Spider-Man, they love it. And I'm sitting here like, go read the original stuff, I mean, I was out from the first issue or second issue when Ben Parker had a ponytail. I was like, what?
What the heck is Weird Number 1 by DC? It was their Paradox Press imprint. I didn't even know that was still around in 97.
They definitely didn't take advantage of their Paradox Press.
I do not remember that at all. It looks like a magazine. It was probably on the magazine stands.
I don't know.
We've never heard of the lead off the JFK cover-up.
I don't know. Tabloids and X-Files were big in the 90s, so maybe this was their...
That's what's fun about this Mike's Amazing World of Comics. You see stuff you didn't even know existed.
Let me see what I got here. Where It Works had finally come out. Vermillion. I'm just seeing if there's anything else.
Wildcats.
Yeah. Young Heroes in Love. That's a book I never understood. They were trying to bring back the romance book. Wildcats 38. This is after the Alan Moore stuff. Now, Alan Moore came back for issue 50. He actually finished his story and his run in issue 50 of Wildcats, just to let you know. He was on Wildcats for something like 13 or 14 issues or something.
Yeah, I was buying those. They were good.
Yeah. And then
what was the name of that character? Oh, what was I forget his name? Who became the villain in Sleeper?
Tao.
Tao.
Yeah.
What is it? Let us sit and talk together, or something like that. I like how he was like, we don't really have a word for the superpower he has. He just talk you into things.
He not only will he talk you into things, but if you sat down and talk to him for a minute, just with him talking to you, using logic and making you see perspectives.
Yeah.
I mean, just talk, you would go insane. Let me grab something real quick.
Yeah. I'm not sure having a magazine with a hole in JFK's head would have been accepted on magazine stands. You got that right. Scott Connor, Marvel doesn't have a single book now I could even care about. Me either. It's been a long time since I've cared about a Marvel book. Yeah, the last Marvel book I had on my pull list was Captain America. I had it up until 1996 when Rob Liefeld took it over. Then I took it off my pull list, and that was the last pull list Marvel book I've had, or DC, I think. I'm trying to think. Yeah. But occasionally I get collected editions of them just to check out. Or I've been taking, like I said, my Marvel DC book, I took House of X, Powers of X out of the library this winter just to try it. Couldn't even make it through it.
Yeah.
Think of how much money Tao could have made if you became an insurance salesman instead of a supervillain. There you go. Is that number 50 of I think I remember that cover. I must have still been buying Wildcats.
It's number 21. They're not in order, but I got
I pulled
here's the number 50 that I got years later. Okay. I didn't know Alan Moore come back to finish his story. But
I'd have to look what issues I have, but I still have them on my shelf.
Yeah. But the Alan Moore Wildcat stuff is so solid. What he did with Mr. Majestic, treating him like a golden age Superman who remembers the 40s and stuff. Yeah.
I was like Mr. Majestic.
Brought in a little cyberpunk there. I ended up this character had to grow on me because I thought she was ridiculous, but Alan Moore made me like her. But they returned to their home planet, if you will, and that's when he started playing around with the original Wildcats. That was just awesome. Yeah, this is good stuff.
I remember what he did on their home planet was the original Wildcats. The whole basis of it was there were two groups on our planet. There were the superheroes and there were the monsters, and they were fighting a war that went back generations to their home. Their two home planets have been fighting, and they have been fighting on Earth this war for a while. And Alan Moore had them go back to their home planet and found out the war had been over for 100 years.
Forever.
Post on Earth.
Yeah, that's what I loved. It was just like he actually. If this was one of the first times I read something where it felt like Alan Moore was just having fun. You know what I mean? Like he was just like, what is?
And the Travis Charest artwork was very good too.
Yeah. Yeah, they gave him the best artist, I think. I mean, that's one of the first times. But it's one of those little gems out there. A lot of people put down 90s comic books. I'm like, there was some good stuff. You just got to dig.
Right, because there were so many comics that finding the good ones isn't as easy.
And I am going to sit there and say I get where they're coming from because there was some bad stuff. You need to go, man? Or
no, not
are
yet.
you good?
Okay, no. Yeah. We're going long, but that's all right.
But like I said, I always say there is some good stuff in the 90s, but like you said, you got to dig. But I mean, you're digging through some very bad stuff to get through there. I totally get it. We're digging
through this list right now and finding the good stuff.
Yeah, this Young Heroes in Love, I know people who have a complete run of that and they love it and they'll never let it go. But I don't know how you defend something like that. I ended up getting an issue because it was a crossover with the 1 Million Morrison crossover.
And I just noticed on there, Wetworks. I
Yeah.
laugh at that all the time because I bought Wetworks. I think I bought it from beginning to end, or that and Cyberforce too. I bought. I don't remember them at all. They were just kind of like easy reads. You pick up, read it, put it back. Nice artwork, shiny. Put it back. I don't remember them at all. I don't remember the stories. I don't remember the characters. They were just comics I read in the late 90s.
All right. The Untold Tales of Spider-Man, they were 99 cents, and apparently they even had a flashback issue. But this is, I think, this is where they came up with the idea, or they built up on the idea where Peter Parker's parents were agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and that's why they really died.
I'll tell you what Marvel learned from those 99-cent Untold issues.
All right.
And I remember Tom Brevoort telling me this. He's like, people are always saying they should lower the price on the comics, so they tried it with that. They put a good team on it. It was good comics. They put it out for 99 cents, and no one wanted it because people perceived it as of lesser value. 99-cent comic obviously wasn't going to be as good as a $2 comic, so they just dismissed it. So that's what Marvel learned from that is don't make 99-cent comics like that because people won't value them.
I will tell you, I suspected something like that because it was around this time. Like I said, as of the year I got married, but I went to an auction, and when we walked around the day of the auction earlier in the day, they were taking a chain to a table to make it look antiqued, and then they raised the price on it, and it sold. And that's when I started realizing when things sound cheap, people think it is cheap. Does that make sense?
Right.
I couldn't wrap my head around that because I'm a cheap bastard,
Right. But I'm buying these True Believers just because they are 99 cents.
But I didn't know it was a thing to beat chairs and tables and stuff with a chain so it'll antique it up. I mean, I never realized relict. Scott Connor says that's called relict or something. I don't know.
I watched the show Lovejoy all through the 90s, so I knew all about the antique world.
Yeah, and that kind of carried over to comics and stuff. You tell somebody it's raised the price, and somebody will want to buy it so they can brag about what they did. Oh my gosh! All right, what do we got here? A lot of Venom going on. I think we've hit everything. Turok. Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. What Acclaim did with Turok really hurt me.
I don't even remember it. I was never a big Turok fan. Boy, tons of X's.
Yeah.
Weird War Tales. Never bought that one. An anthology book.
Yeah, What If was... Yeah, now the What If series, now that you got me down here and stuff, the actual What Ifs, I never saw this one. This is at -1. That What Ifs, the 90s What If, there's a lot of good stuff if you plow through there. Some early work by Kurt Busiek and a few people before they were big.
People remember that pretty well. That one, because I'm a fan of the first volume of What If, because that was my Bronze Age baby, so that was my era. But a lot of people I know, because What If during the 90s, not a lot of people were paying attention to. But a lot of people look back on them fondly, I must say. I've heard more people say good things about 90s What If in the last 10 years than I ever did during the 90s.
Yeah, I enjoyed the book. That was one of the ones there at the beginning of the 90s, into the 80s there. You had, you had What If, you had John Burns' Namor, you had Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man. There was a bunch of books that started out, and I think What If ran longer than any of those books, if I remember right. Maybe Namor. I mean, Byrne left after the first 3 years, but that Namor book, no, I think this did survive more than any of them, the What If issue. And I mean, you had Wolverine with Rob Liefeld on it, joining S.H.I.E.L.D. You had Wolverine. I mean, a lot of the early stories were Wolverine, but they still had some juice because by the time they got up higher in the numbers and stuff, they went back to Infinity Gauntlet. And there's a key book where Silver Surfer got the Infinity Gauntlet or something. They were still able to like bring the big one in that is when they had Spider-Girl pop up. It was Peter Parker's daughter taking over the Spider-Man mantle, and that ended up becoming a series out of that.
Here's a question that just popped into my mind. I was looking at Savage Dragon 38 there. Is Savage Dragon the only comic on this entire list that is still going with the same numbering uninterrupted. It might be.
Yeah. Now, and I'm going to, since we're talking, I'm going to do a leap poll. There was a month at Image where everybody switched books.
He went back and did his own issue 13 because he couldn't stand it that he didn't have an issue 13 that he did himself. I find that amazing.
Yeah. Now, he's about to join the 300 club. There's a lot of people talking about some of these books joining the 300
club. Is 2 issues away, so it'll be a few years still. But
yeah. So on one hand, you know, it's a creator-owned book that he's going to join the 300 club with Cerebus. You know what I mean?
Right.
My problem is that I don't know, man. I mean, he should join it because it's been his book. He has stayed on it and stuff. But to me, it's just kind of funny. If I compared Savage Dragon to the quality of Cerebus, even with, you know, even if we just go to the art and not the story and stuff, it kind of bothers me a little bit that he's going to be compared Savage Dragon to Cerebus.
Now I'll tell you right now that they're two different things, but
yeah.
I actually a couple years ago sat down and read Savage Dragon from beginning to end.
Well, not serious?
I've sat down and read. It's not like reading Cerebus from beginning to end. It's not.
No.
It's a much easier read, but it is amazing to read it that way. To me, Eric Larson, because I still read it month to month, you know. Matter of fact, I wrote a review of it on my blog. I'll have to look it up and send it to you. Eric Larson is a lifetime Oscar winner. Usagi has been around, but it's not the same number. Eric Larson is a lifetime achievement Oscar winner in that I don't think in any given month you'd put Savage Dragon in the top 5, maybe top 10 of comic books. But he'd definitely be in, like, I don't know, the top 20, which is pretty good. And to have a comic book in, like, I'm just talking quality, not sense.
Yeah.
And to have a comic book in, like, you could judge it anywhere from, like, if I were to judge it in my comic, it would probably be in, like, for me, anywhere from 8 to 18. I would probably judge it on any given month. And to be able to do that for that long, there's no one else who's done that. Who else has not even single, but with a team, put out a comic book that's been at least a B+ for that long? Nobody.
No. That's what I mean.
So and reading them from beginning of the end made me realize that. And you can see how he changes things. He doesn't keep the status quo either. Things change. People come, people go, people live, people die. There's a whole big sweep of stuff going on that's not going on because he's writing a big epic comic. It's going on because he's writing a comic from month to month the best he can and doing the best he can from month to month.
Well, you almost said you were right there with what I felt about it, right? To me, it's like I'll totally go with you on the Lifetime Achievement Award. That actually sounds better. But to me, Savage Dragon, when it comes to like quality across the board, beginning, ending, and stuff like that, it's like a clip show. His best moments could be in a clip show. First, second issue, he had the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Then you got to jump up and, we got Hellboy popping up. We're still not having a great Savage Dragon moments. But then he really got noticed with Savage Dragon when he had like the God versus Devil fight. But you know what I mean? And then we can speed up. Yeah.
To me, Savage Dragon gets really good after about issue 70. That's when he let his Jack Kirby influence out of the box. Because when I reread Savage Dragon 2, I realized something that I didn't realize before. Was that, and it was the first time I was able to put my finger on the image style of the early 90s, the image storytelling style, and the storytelling style in general of the first half of the 90s was what I now call the image pinup style. because the story was built, and reading those Savage Dragons in a row, I could really see it, especially when the whole story was built around full page spreads and double page spreads.
Right.
And so that was the story. So things would happen, and then a full page spread would be your dramatic reveal moment. And then things would happen, and then a double page spread would be your dramatic reveal moment. And you could count on those spreads in the story in a way that you couldn't at any other time. It was like they were taking a Jack Kirby issue and doubling the amount of spreads, but they weren't doing the Jack Kirby stuff in the rest of the book. What he did when he got to issue 70 was he abandoned that image style of storytelling and went with the Jack Kirby 6-panel. He did it specifically because he actually turned Savage Dragon into Commandy.
Yeah, he had Commandy make a cameo from behind. I've got those issues. That's what brought me back to Kirby brought me back to Savage Dragon, is that he's doing an ode to Commandy in Jack Kirby's Commandy, and he did it excellent. That's what I mean. That's a solid run with Eric Larson there. That leading up to that.
All of it, it's not even a run. It's one big thing. Because you're thinking of it as a run because you're reading it in parts. And I kind of thought of it as a month-to-month comic until I read it as one. And it's really interesting to read from beginning to end, the ebbs and flow, because it's one person, it's a look into one person's mind and one person's comic. So it's really interesting to read like that because there's no other example of that. There just really isn't. And even like Cerebus is such an outlier that it's its own thing. You cannot compare Cerebus to any other comic. Even if it's mostly one person, Dave Sim, he's really so different than everybody else that he's an outlier. Yeah. Eric Larson isn't an outlier. He's a mainstream guy. He's an outlier for having done 250 issues of his own comic, but he's a mainstream, solid. All his influences everybody else in mainstream. So that's what makes it kind of different. Yeah, Gordon Allen says, Jared made me appreciate Savage Dragon, the comic I'd never read. It's one of the best written comics. It really is. Its comedic timing is brilliant. And sometimes I don't know who's better at it, him or Terry Moore. Yeah. And there was even like a few years ago, he went into this it became X-rated for a few. He just started doing like casually throwing sex into it, and it became very sexual. And it was like that for like 2 years, and then that just went away. So that was an interesting period even too. It was just like, because there were sex jokes and sex and actual, graphic images.
We're kind of booking, and we've come circular where we started out talking about the pre-code days.
Oh, you're muted. Hold on.
Oh, I'm muted.
We can't hear you. I can't hear you at all. 1 second. Drop out and come back on.
Hello?
Nothing. Try dropping out and then coming back on if you can. Let's see if he can make it back on. Windows 10 is destroying his world. Rob Ripper, I really enjoy reading Savage Dragon. Used to watch the cartoon. I never watched the cartoon. Was noticeable Kirby influence of Savage Dragon happened before or after Larson worked on the Defenders in the early? I think it was a little bit before. It was like Savage Dragon. He was always influenced by Kirby, but with around issue 70, he just straight up did a Commandy rip. He destroyed Savage Dragon's world and left him the last boy on Earth.
You guys still hear me? Yeah, Jared, they're saying it might be on your end.
Right. Check how's my, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I can hear you. They can hear me too.
Oh, they can hear you, Tim. I don't know what's going on with me. Hold on. Maybe it's just me. Let me check my sound.
I see a command.
Oh, there we go. It was me. Something, my speaker went offline, so you were talking.
Nice. That's why I love doing this. The people that come in there, man, they're in there with we're in this together, man. So,
There we go.
now the thing is,
I've never had that happen before. My Bluetooth must have went out.
Oh yeah, no problem. I'm trying to think an example. I got off track there in my head. Now we got an echo. I can hear me when I'm talking through your stuff.
I don't know why that is.
Windows 10. No. But maybe I'm being a little. I can totally say, oh no, I can't get this. Let me try this. Okay, but maybe I'm being kind of an elitist. Maybe it's the quality of the book compared to. It's almost like something lowbrow being celebrated with something so unique and really an accomplishment. One great big huge 30-year story or 300-issue story with Cerebus and stuff. And then you come over here and you got Savage Dragon, which is more cartoony, when it comes to the art, comparing it to Gerard and stuff, and I'm trying to think of something like on TV or some movies or something that were like loved by everybody, but people look down on them like they're not film. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things. It's like the potty humor a Shakespeare play. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's kind of an elitist quality thing here. You know what I mean? I see a lot more work.
I'm okay with elitism. That's the difference between me. I always hear people say elitist. I'm like, I'm okay with elitism. If people think they're better than me, that's fine. I don't care.
Yeah. But I mean, he's going to make it. It's an indie book going for 300 years, but I don't feel like he's breaking new ground because Cerebus made a lot of things possible for the indie people. You know what I mean?
I don't think it's breaking new ground, but it's an accomplishment. It's an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah.
Was it Scott Connor said, I lost all respect for Eric Larson after that whole name withheld fiasco where he wrote an anonymous letter into CBG claiming creators do not need editors. I agree with him. Creators do not need editors. I have worked with enough editors who were freaking useless to know that creators do not leave editors. Some creators do, but not all of them do. You're not going to get me on the side of the editors ever. Even though I have some friends who are editors and I respect them and they do a good job, too many editors were assholes for me ever to say creators need editors.
Okay, just to be devil's advocate here, I have no stake in this one. But what about any editors actually like had a point, or what was the way like they?
I'm not saying that. There are good editors that are good. And I worked with some good editors who I have no problems with, and the industry actually most of the time needs editors for the industry, but the artists don't need the editors. If you can get something done on your own, you don't need an editor.
I just wish some editors would be better at continuity. That's it.
They're like anyone else at their job. There's some people who are good at their job, and there are some people who are bad at their job. And there were a lot of them who were bad at their job. Peter David versus Rob Liefeld too?
Well, there's Peter David versus Todd McFarlane. That's the one I remember.
Yeah, there was that too. Peter David was fighting with all the rich guys.
Yeah, and you had Byrne, and there's the whole thing. That was one of the things about the '90s and stuff.
But someone just got in trouble on Twitter for criticizing editors too. I can't remember who it was.
Danny Coates?
No, it was like it was an artist. It was saying something about really along the same lines. You really don't need it, because if you say you really don't need editors and you're a freelancer, you won't get work. That's the problem. That's why people say you really don't need editors, because as Gil Kane once said, you don't get hired by companies, you get hired by editors. So if you say bad things about editors, you will not get hired, which is why Eric Larson is going to be the only one in the comics industry who ever says a bad word about editors, because he doesn't need them. He's his own boss. That's why you will which is why I don't know why he withheld his name. I don't know what year it was, but he probably withheld his name because that's what you cannot say a bad word about editors or you will never work again.
You see, this doesn't surprise me. I'm not going to comment because I'm not in the industry. You know what? You're coming from life experience and all this stuff. But I'm sitting here compared to other things at other jobs in my life where I'm sitting here like it's the same across the board, brother. There's stuff, yeah.
You can't piss off your boss.
Uh-huh.
Especially when your boss actually hires you. Sometimes your boss doesn't have the power to hire or fire you. But when you're a comic book editor, you do. You can say, I don't want this guy.
Uh-huh. Oh, man.
And if word gets around that you're difficult, i.e., you said something bad about editors, that's one difficulty, you're never getting hired.
Oh, man. This is wild.
Yeah, but that may be true that the Image guys weren't great writers, but neither were most of the writers at Marvel and DC at the time. I mean, if you look at if Marvel and DC were each putting out 100 books a month, you think the writers on the back 25, books 75 to 100 were any good?
What is this? I'm going to put this up so I can read it. Paulo, you can be an ironic elitist. Stylized mullets are popular hairdos among the cultural elitists in the city near me.
You know what I always, I have found, because people always, I used to have crazy haircuts all the time. If you look at me in the end, I shaved the sides, I grew the top long, I had a top knot, but the only name for a men's haircut that people know is mullet. So people will look at like friends of mine or whoever, like, oh, you used to have a mullet. And I used to try to explain it to them. It's not a mullet. That's a top knot with but they just laugh because you're trying to defend yourself. So now anytime anybody says I have a mullet, I just start yelling, the people's haircut. You big city snobs will never understand it. And they just get all shaky and stop mentioning mullets. So now anytime anyone mentions a mullet, that's what I shout at them. The people's haircut, you big city snobs will never understand it. Well, that stops any mullet discussion in case you ever want to.
It kind of blows my mind when I found out I'm cultured in ways around here that nobody else is, and I can't figure out how that happened. Not saying I'm from an uncultured area, but it's not very sophisticated. But when everybody started wearing the Trilby hats and they kept calling them fedoras, I wanted to wring necks. I'm like, that's a Trilby. What is wrong with you? Where did I learn that? Maybe from Watchmen. I don't know.
You might be an elitist if you know what a Trilby hat is compared to a fedora.
Yes. That wore me out, and those Trilby stuck around for a good year and a half. You know what I mean? I was like, what are you doing? Oh, man. What we got here?
Yeah, Scott Connor. Some people think anyone with long hair has a mullet. Yeah, exactly. Because it's the only name of a men's haircut anyone knows. Business in the front, party in the back. That should be understood, but it's not. Like I said, when I'm wearing a top knot, that's not business in front.
Well, I'm pretty proud. I'd almost like go into my pictures right now, see if it's on my computer, man. But I had a mullet of all mullets, in my opinion, man. I had the Def Leppard Joe Elliott mullet, if you will. I felt cool. Girls play with your hair, so you keep growing that part out. That's where it came from. I like to say it's from some metal roots, but no.
In the early 90s, I had my hair long on the back.
Yeah.
I had the sides shaved. I had the top spiked, except for one piece on the top was this long and came down over my nose. So I had one piece coming down like this.
That's a Misfits death lock is what that is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
My friend said the devil lock. That's what my friend Bunch called it. Some people called it the angler fish.
Devil lock. The devil lock. That's what it is. Yeah, I'll go with that one. Oh, wait a minute. Hulk Hogan had the skullet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. When I see somebody with a top knot or a man bun, it's like I've already made up my mind about them.
Whatever. We long-haired people don't care what you short-haired people think about.
It's one thing to be walking around your house all comfortable and stuff. It's another thing when you go out in public like that. You're just asking.
I used to play pickup basketball games wearing a top knot in the mid 80s.
Again,
I was growing my hair out.
Time and place. Yes.
No one said a thing.
No, because it was the proper time to have that haircut. Had that
Yeah,
style.
no one
Yeah,
else had a top knot in 1996 or whenever I was picking
Well,
up
you know, I
basketball.
take it back. Enough people had not gotten that haircut to ruin it. How's that sound? We'll go with
Well,
that.
also it was never a bun either. It was sticking up out of the top of my head.
We're dividing the audience, man. We're dividing. They're picking sides, man. Oh man. All right, I'm gonna have to wind this thing up. We're past.
Yeah, we've been talking for a while.
Okay. Well, I had fun. We're gonna definitely do this. We want to tell everybody we might try for a weekly show, or you need to look around this weekend, see what your schedule's like.
I'm fine with Saturdays right now. I'm usually Saturday afternoons. I'm usually pretty free mornings, so
Okay.
I'm okay with a Saturday show.
All righty, not a problem, man. But thanks for everybody popping in here. We had a good time. Let's see what this last one last one. The Camaro crash helmet, the Mississippi mud flat, Kentucky waterfall. The list goes on. I heard all the mullet. Now I don't know. I don't know any other way that's perfect to end the show. Like right there. All right, man. Well, thanks for popping in, guys. Be excellent to each other. Check out Jared's channel and plug all your stuff if you want there, man.
Okay. Radiantcomics.com to read my blog and my web comic. Go to Jared Osborne on YouTube to see what comics I bought this week, which also has a link to it on my radiantcomics.com. You can find me through there too.
There you go. All right, guys. Be excellent to each other. Later.
Have a good one.